Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto, after becoming Pirate King, married the most powerful and beautiful women from every sea? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Queen of the Azure East. The sea in the East Blue was supposed to be a gentle thing. A place of new beginnings, of hopeful dreams setting sail under a kind sun. The crew of the Sea Weaver, a swift caravel in the Azure Fleet, had believed that it was why they'd signed on, to protect that dream under the command of their queen, the Weather Witch herself. They were guardians of the cradle of pirates, ensuring the new era born from the Pirate King's victory was one of peace, not plunder. That belief shattered in a wave of chilling, unnatural silence. Report. Captain Kenji O.F. The Sea Weaver gripped the polished wood of the ship's wheel, his knuckles white. His gaze was fixed on the vessel ahead, a monstrous thing of black iron and jagged edges that had risen from the mists of the calm belt like a bad omen. It flew no flag he recognized, only a brutal, stylized emblem of a shattered sword. No response to hails, sir. They're maintaining speed, closing distance. The spotter called down from the crow's nest, his voice tight with fear. The air grew cold, not the crisp chill of a coming storm, but a dead, tomb-like cold that seemed to suck the warmth from their very bones. The vibrant blue of the sea around the enemy ship was darkening, turning a sickly, bruised purple-black. "What is that?" a deckhand whispered, pointing a trembling finger. "The water, it's dying." Kenji saw it too. Fish were floating to the surface, belly up, their scales losing their luster in seconds. The very life was being leached from the ocean in a rapidly expanding circle around the black ship. "Full sail. Get us clear of that blight," Kenji commanded, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The Sea Weaver was fast, but the dead zone was expanding faster. The edge of the discolored water lapped at their hull. A man screamed. He was a devil fruit user, a man who could turn his arms into sharp, feathered wings. He clutched his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps as if he were drowning on dry land. "My power. I can't feel it. It's gone." He collapsed to the deck, his body writhing in agony, the strength draining from him like sand from an hourglass. A figure emerged on the deck of the enemy ship. He was massive, a mountain of a man with a colossal mechanical arm that hissed steam in the cold air. Even at this distance, Kenji could feel the crushing weight of his presence. It was a presence from a bygone era, a ghost of pure, absolute justice. Black Arm. Zephyr. The legendary Marine Admiral, long thought dead. "There is no escape from the new order." Zephyr's voice boomed across the water, amplified by some unseen device. It was not the voice of a man, but of a prophet delivering a sermon of damnation. "Freedom is chaos. Piracy is a cancer. This world, sick with dreams, requires a final, absolute cure. We will sever the diseased limb of the grand line from the healthy body of the blues. We will bring a great and lasting silence. Your Pirate King's era is over before it has begun." From the bowels of Zephyr's ship, a low hum escalated into a piercing whine. A cannon, unlike any Kenji had ever seen, rose from a hidden turret. Its barrel glowed not with fire, but with the same deathly purple energy that was poisoning the sea. It was aimed directly at them. "Brace for impact," Kenji roared, a useless command against a power he couldn't comprehend. There was no cannonball. There was only a beam of pure, silent darkness. When it struck the Sea Weaver, there was no explosion, no fire, no splintering of wood. There was only dissolution. The wood of the hull turned to gray dust. The sails crumbled like ancient parchment. The men caught in its path simply ceased. They didn't even have time to scream. The ship was erased, section by section, until nothing remained but a cloud of fine, lifeless powder settling on the surface of the dead, black water. Kenji's last thought was not of himself, but of his queen. She needed to be warned. This was not a pirate. This was an apocalypse. The news traveled faster than the wind. It reached Naruto Uzumaki aboard his ship, the Shinobi, as it cut silently through the waters of the New World. The Shinobi was a vessel born of two worlds, its design a fusion of Wano craftsmanship and advanced technology from Germa. It ran not on wind or steam, but on a contained, self-perpetuating vow. RTEX of Naruto's own wind-natured chakra, making it the fastest and quietest ship on the seas. It was a predator, a ghost, a king's chariot. Naruto stood on the deck, his back to the mast, the familia. Our tattered black cloak of the pirate king billowing around him. His vibrant orange jumpsuit had long been replaced by a more fitting attire. Simple black pants, shinobi sandals, and a deep crimson tunic. The Uzumaki swirl emblazoned proudly on the back. The title of Pirate King had not made him soft. It had sharpened him. The goofy, hyperactive ninja was still there, buried beneath layers of experience, responsibility, and a power that could shake the world to its foundations. His eyes, the same piercing blue, held a depth that spoke of countless battles and impossible victories. He held the small, trembling news coup in his hand, its message tube already open. The report was concise, brutal, and chilling. An entire patrol fleet in the East Blue, gone. An unidentified weapon, a dead zone in the ocean, and a name whispered by a single, dying survivor picked up by a passing merchant ship, Zephyr. An old ghost, a voice rumbled beside him. It belonged to Katakuri Charlotte, the stoic mochi man, who had pledged his loyalty not out of defeat, but out of a profound respect for the man who had shown him it was all right to show his true face to the world. He now stood as one of Naruto's most trusted guardians. He should be dead. Quote, "A lot of people should be," Naruto said, his voice quiet, devoid of its usual boisterous energy. He gently stroked the news coup's head, calming its frantic heartbeat before letting it take flight. He watched it disappear into the clouds before turning his gaze to the horizon, his sage mode senses already stretching out, feeling the subtle disharmony in the world's life force, a faint, discordant note emanating from the direction of the East Blue. A weapon that kills the sea itself. That's not justice. That's blasphemy. He didn't need to shout orders. His crew, a small, hand-picked collection of the world's most formidable individuals, already knew. Yamato, the fierce Oni princess who had found her freedom in his cause, was already at the helm, her powerful hands gripping the wheel. Killer, the stoic right hand of Eustace Kid, now served as Naruto's tactician, his masked face turned towards a map, already charting the fastest possible course. "We change course," Naruto stated, the words carrying the absolute weight of a king's decree. "Set a path for the East Blue. Full speed." The East Blue, Killer questioned, not with doubt, but with a need for clarity. "That's Nami's territory. She commands the Azure Fleet. Her authority there is absolute." Naruto's eyes softened for a fraction of a second at the mention of her name. "I know. This isn't about territory. Zephyr isn't a pirate raiding a village. He's a zealot trying to declare war on the ocean. Nami's strong, stronger than almost anyone I know. But no one should have to face a ghost like that alone." His gaze hardened once more, a glint of orange fire flickering in his pupils. "Besides," he added, a low growl in his voice, "he's in my friend's garden, and he's poisoning the soil. I'm going to pull him out by the roots." The shinobi leaned into a sharp, impossibly fast turn, leaving a silent, churning wake in the vast blue of the new world. It did not sail. It flew, a blah. CK and Crimson Arrow aimed at the heart of the coming storm. The storm had already broken over Kokoyasi Island. Not a meteorological storm. Those were child's play, but a storm of information, panic, and political pressure. The island, once a quiet, orange-growing paradise, had been transformed into the fortified heart of the Azure Fleet. At its center stood a towering white lighthouse, but instead of a lamp, it housed the most advanced strategic command center in the Four Blues. Inside, Nami stood before a colossal map of the East Blue, projected onto a wall of frosted glass. It was a living map, updated in real time with fleet positions, weather patterns she herself had predicted, and now, a growing blotch of ugly purple-black near the entrance to the reverse mountain. She was no longer he young navigator who wore bikinis and jeans. She was a queen. She wore a tailored, deep blue officer's coat over a simple white dress, her long, orange hair tied back in a severe but elegant ponytail. The Klima tacked, now a sleek, black staff with gold fittings, was strapped to her back, not just a weapon, but a scepter of office. Her face, though still beautiful, was etched with the fine lines of command. Her eyes, which once sparkled with mischief and dreams of treasure, now held the sharp, calculating focus of a grandmaster playing for the highest possible stakes. The council from the log. U-Town Archipelago is demanding we withdraw our blockade. They claim it's disrupting trade, her second-in-command, a stern-faced fishman named Gyojin, reported. Let them demand, Nami said without turning from the map. Her voice was calm, but with an edge of steel. Their trade won't matter much when their ports are part of a dead sea. Send them the casualty reports from the 7th Patrol. If they still have complaints after that, they can file them with the Sea Kings for all I care. What's the status of the evacuation civilian ships? Moving on schedule, Queen Nami. We're clearing a 50-mile radius around the projected target zone. Make it 100, she ordered. We don't know how fast this thing can spread. She pressed her fingers to her temple, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. For 3 days, she hadn't slept. She had been coordinating fleets, managing panicked politicians, and trying to decipher the impossible puzzle of Zephyr's weapon. How do you fight an enemy that can kill the ocean itself? Every strategy she devised felt inadequate, like trying to build a dam against a tsunami with a handful of sand. The doors to the command center hissed open. A wave of murmurs and gasps rippled through the officers on duty. Every head turned. Gyojin snapped to attention, his eyes wide. Nami turned, her expression a mixture of annoyance at the interruption and weary curiosity. And then she saw him. He stood in the doorway, his black cloak seeming to drink the light, his crimson tunic a splash of defiant color against the sterile white of the room. The air crackled around him, thick with an energy that felt like the calm before a hurricane. He wasn't just a man, he was a presence, a force of nature that warped the very atmosphere of the room. Naruto Uzumaki, the Pirate King. Her heart did a stupid, traitorous little flip in her chest, a relic of a time long past. She quickly crushed it. He was not her captain anymore. She was not his navigator. They were two sovereigns, meeting on the precipice of a war. You're a long way from the new world, Naruto, she said, her voice even, betraying none of the turmoil inside her. He walked towards her, his shinobi sandals making no sound on the polished floor. His eyes met hers, and in their depths, she saw not a king looking down on a lesser ruler, but an old friend seeing another in trouble. Heard you had a pest problem, Naruto said, his voice a low rumble. He stopped before her, his gaze sweeping over the tactical map. He took in the entire strategic situation in a single, comprehensive glance. Zephyr. He's targeting the reverse mountain. Trying to prove a point. I'm aware of what he's trying to do, Nami replied, a hint of defensiveness in her tone. My fleets are in position to intercept. They'll be destroyed, Naruto stated simply. It wasn't a criticism, it was a fact. Your ships are wood and steel. Your men are flesh and blood. His weapon erases things from existence. You can't fight that with cannons and tactics. And you can, she challenged, crossing her arms. What's your plan, Your Majesty? To hit it with a bigger stick. A ghost of a smile touched Naruto's lips. Something like that, but the stick is only as good as the arm that swings it. And the arm is only as good as the eye that guides it. He's using the ocean as a weapon. But you command the weather. You speak the sea's true language. He can poison a patch of water, but you can summon a typhoon that can swallow his entire fleet. He wasn't taking over. He wasn't dismissing her authority. He was looking at her command center, at her Azure fleet, and seeing a vital piece of the puzzle he couldn't provide. He was offering not a rescue, but a partnership. The tension in her shoulders eased, just a fraction. The energy readings are unstable. A massive atmospheric disturbance, like a hurricane, could cause a catastrophic overload in his weapon's core. But the risk is better than the alternative, Naruto finished. He pointed to a specific coordinate on the map, a treacherous strait known for its unpredictable currents. He'll make his final approach through here. It's the fastest route. Lure him in. Your fleet will be the bait. Keep him occupied. I'll be the hook. It was a bold, reckless, and incredibly dangerous plan. It relied on perfect timing, unparalleled meteorological control, and a single individual's ability to fight a legend. It was, she realized with a strange sense of nostalgia, exactly the kind of plan that used to get them into and out of impossible situations on the Grand Line. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. The boy was gone, but the fire in his eyes was brighter than ever. He carried the weight of the world now, and yet, he still looked at her as if she were the one person who could help him hold it up. "All right, Pirate King," Nami said, a slow, genuine smile finally breaking through her weary facade. "Let's show this ghost what a real storm looks like." The sea was a maelstrom of chaos. The Azure Fleet, 100 ships strong, engaged Zephyr's ironclad armada in the Devil's Maw Strait. Cannonballs of condensed lightning, Nami's own invention, crashed against reinforced hulls. Whirlpools, summoned from the depths by her command, dragged smaller vessels into the abyss. A thick, unnatural fog blanketed the entire battlefield, turning the engagement into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. From the bridge of her flagship, the Weather Witch, Nami orchestrated the symphony of destruction. Squadron Gamma, pull back. Lure their vanguard into the eastern shoals. Squadron Beta, prepare the Mirage Tempo. I want them seeing ghosts. All ships, fire at will. She was a force of nature, her klima tact an extension of her will. She danced across the bridge, pointing the staff, twisting it, calling forth gales and thunderclaps with the casual confidence of a goddess. Her fleet moved with a precision born of absolute trust in her command. They were the bait, and they were playing their part perfectly, drawing Zephyr's forces deeper into the trap. But Zephyr's Neo-Marines were fanatics, their resolve unshakable. And at the heart of their formation, the monstrous flagship, the Sea Prison, began to glow with its sickening purple light. "The dead zone is activating." A lookout screamed. The water began to turn black. The fog began to dissipate. Not from wind, but as if it were being unmade. The energy-draining field expanded, and Nami's ships at the front line began to stall, their devil fruit-powered engineers collapsing at their posts. "Now, Naruto," Nami whispered, her knuckles white on her staff. As if summoned by her words, he appeared. It started with a golden flash in the sky. Naruto, cloaked eye, and the blazing orange energy of his Sage Biju mode, descended from the heavens like a meteor. He didn't land on a ship. He landed on the ocean itself, his feet kicking up explosions of steam where they touched the water. The dead zone's aura washed over him, and the colossal chakra avatar flickered, but it did not extinguish. His own life force, his connection to nature itself, was fighting back against the encroaching void. Zephyr. Naruto's voice was a physical force, a shockwave that rolled across the water and rattled the iron hulls of the enemy fleet. He moved. One moment he was a speck in the distance. The next he was a blur of golden light carving a path of destruction through the Neo-Marine armada. He wasn't using ship-destroying attacks. He was more precise. He moved from vessel to vessel, a Rasengan in his hand disabling their engines, a flick of his wrist sending their cannons flying overboard. He was a surgeon, dismantling an army with breathtaking speed and efficiency. On the deck of the Sea Prison, Zephyr watched the Pirate King's assault, his face an impassive granite mask. So, the symbol of chaos arrives. Predictable. He raised his colossal mechanical arm, the Smasher. "All units, ignore the Azure Fleet. Concentrate all fire on Uzumaki Naruto. Erase him." The entire Neo-Marine fleet turned its guns on the single golden warrior. 1,000 cannons fired at once. Naruto didn't even flinch. He raised a hand, and a swirling vortex of black energy, a truth-seeking orb, expanded into a defensive shield that swallowed the volley of cannonballs whole without a single tremor. He dispelled the shield and pointed a finger at Zephyr's flagship. "Your fight is with me, old man." A tiny pinprick of black energy appeared at his fingertip. It expanded rapidly, swirling with untamed power. A Biju bomb. Small, condensed, but impossibly potent. He fired. It crossed the distance in a heartbeat. Zephyr met it head-on. He slammed his Smasher arm forward, the Sea Prism. Stone embedded in its core glowing ominously. The Biju bomb struck the arm and, instead of detonating in a world-shattering explosion, it was simply nullified. The energy dissipated with a dull hiss. "Your borrowed power is useless against the will of true justice, boy," Zephyr growled. But it was a feint. A distraction. While all eyes were on Naruto, Nami was making her move. "All ships, full retreat. Now," she commanded. The sky, which had been clear moments before, was now black with storm clouds that had gathered in an impossibly short time. The wind howled, whipping the sea into a frenzy. Rain began to fall in thick, slanting sheets. "It's time," Nami breathed, raising her klima tact to the heavens. All her focus, all her energy, all her profound understanding of the world's atmosphere, poured into the staff. Thunder breathed tempo. The sky answered. Lightning, not in single strikes, but in a vast, crackling web, spider-webbed across the clouds directly above the devil's maw. The air became thick with ozone and the raw, untamed power of nature unleashed. Now, for the main event, she smiled, a fierce, wild thing. Hurricane tempo. Poseidon's wrath. The sea itself rose up. The wind converged, creating a colossal vortex. The storm clouds spiraled downwards. A hurricane, a full-fledged, Category 5 monster, was born in the middle of the strait. It was her masterpiece of destruction. A storm that defied all laws of meteorology. Zephyr's fleet was thrown into chaos. Ships were torn from their anchors, smashed against each other, and dragged into the swirling vortex. The sea prison itself, for all its size and power, groaned under the strain. And on its deck, the dead zone weapon began to spark and sputter, its purple glow flickering erratically. The storm's raw, natural energy was disrupting the delicate, unnatural technology. "This is our chance," Naruto yelled, his voice cutting through the roar of the hurricane. He began gathering chakra, a massive amount of it. The wind from the storm seemed to flow into him, feeding his next attack. A giant, swirling shuriken of pure wind energy formed above him, so large it dwarfed the ships below. Wind style. Shuriken. But he wasn't done. He overlaid it with the dark, potent energy of a tailed beast bomb, and then, for the first time since he'd become Pirate King, he unleashed the full, suffocating pressure of his will. The sky cracked. The sea recoiled. Supreme King Haki, so powerful it manifested as visible black and red lightning, coated the entire attack. Zephyr stared up at the descending apocalypse, his expression not of fear, but of grim acceptance. He aimed his smasher arm at the attack, a final, defiant act of nullification. "Justice will prevail," he roared. The tailed beast bomb Shuriken struck. It did not simply explode. It imploded, tearing a hole in reality. The smasher arm, the sea prism stone, the dead zone weapon, all of it was ground into nothingness by the swirling vortex of Haki-infused energy. The blast consumed the sea prison, and in a flash of silent, blinding light, the flagship and its master were gone. The storm subsided as quickly as it had formed. The howling wind softened to a gentle breeze. The black clouds parted, allowing the rays of a setting sun to paint the sky in hues of orange, pink, and gold. The sea, though littered with the wreckage of Zephyr's armada, was once again a vibrant, living blue. Naruto stood on the deck of the Weather Witch, the golden chakra cloak having faded, leaving him in his simple crimson and black. He looked tired, but he was smiling. Nami stood beside him, her hair damp from the rain, her coat whipping in the breeze. She was watching her fleet begin the work of rescuing the survivors from the Neo-Marine ships. There was no elation on her face, only a profound, weary relief. "It's over," she said softly. "For now," Naruto corrected, his gaze distant. "A weapon that erases things. An ideology that wants to enforce silence." This wasn't just Zephyr. He was a tool. The old world, the shadows in charge, they're scared. They're starting to push back. He turned to face her, the setting sun catching the gold in his hair. His expression was serious, the weight of his new era settling upon him once more. "I can't be everywhere at once, Nami. I can win battles, but this is a war for the world's future. It needs to be protected, nurtured. It needs leaders in every sea, working together, united under a single banner." He took a half-step closer. The air between them, once filled with the roar of a hurricane, was now charged with a quiet, intense intimacy. "The East Blue is safe because of you. You're not just a navigator or a strategist anymore. You're its queen, a queen who can command the very storms to protect her people." Her breath hitched. She knew where this was going, and the sheer audacity of it, the sheer Naruto-ness of it, was staggering. "To build the world we fought for," he continued, his voice low and earnest. His blue eyes boring into hers, "I need more than allies. I need a family, a foundation. I need a queen who understands the flow of the world, who can read the winds of change and summon the thunder when it's needed." Quote, he reached out, not to touch her, but as an offering. A gesture of respect. "Nami, marry me. Help me protect this new dawn." It wasn't a romantic plea whispered under the moonlight. It was a king's proposal to a queen. A strategist's proposition to his equal. A friend's heartfelt request to the person he trusted to watch his back against the coming darkness. It was a merging of strengths. A strategic masterstroke, and the rekindling of a bond forged in the fires of 100 adventures. Nami looked from his earnest face to the peaceful horizon. He wasn't offering her a crown. He was offering her a burden, a responsibility, a fight that would make everything they'd ever done before look like a child's game. And she had never wanted anything more. A slow smile spread across her face. Bright as the morning sun. "You idiot," she said, the words full of warmth and affection. "You always did know how to make a girl a crazy offer." She took a deep breath, the salty air filling her lungs. "All right, Naruto, let's go build a world." As the first stars began to prick the twilight sky, a coded message was already being sent from the Weather Witch's communication room. It was addressed to Nico Robin. Attached was a detailed scan of a strange, non-terrestrial metal fragment recovered from the core of Zephyr's weapon. On it, etched in a language older than any known kingdom, was a single, chilling phrase. "And the sea's voice shall be silenced, a worthy tribute to the coming of the Great Silence, the herald of the Void Bringer." The first piece of the puzzle had been found. And the Pirate King's alliance had its first queen. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Keeper of the Ashen West. The Great Library of Ohara was not a place. It was an idea. It was the stubborn, undying belief that knowledge could never truly be extinguished. And for the past 20 years, Nico Robin had been its sole, hunted missionary. Now, she was its high priestess, and she had built a new sanctuary. From the outside, it looked like a cluster of barren, mist-shrouded sea stacks, a jagged and unremarkable feature on the endless expanse of the West Blues Ocean. But the MISTs were a carefully maintained illusion, and the rocks were the disguised hull of the world's most impossible ship, the Veritas. It was a moving fortress, a cloaked repository of all the truths the world government had tried to bury. Inside, it was a breathtaking cathedral of knowledge. Tiers of mahogany shelves spiraled up into a vaulted ceiling, holding countless books, scrolls, and poneglyph rubbings. Quiet, focused scholars, revolutionaries, disgraced academics, and truth-seekers from every corner of the world, moved through the aisles like devoted acolytes. At its heart, in a chamber where a full-scale, perfect rubbing of the Rio poneglyph hung like a grand tapestry, stood Nico Robin. She wore a simple, elegant black dress, her dark hair falling freely over her shoulders. The years of flight and fear had been replaced by a quiet, unshakable authority. She was no longer just the archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates, she was the archivist of the world, the leader of a global network dedicated to preserving its memory. Her hand, sprouting from the surface of a communications dial, relayed a message in a silent, coded sign language only her inner circle understood. Her expression was grim. "Another one," she said, her voice a low, somber whisper that still carried across the vast chamber. The entire archaeological faculty at the University of Trelawney, their minds wiped clean. Koala, the Revolutionary Army's fishman karate instructor and one of Robin's most trusted lieutenants, slammed a fist on a nearby table. "That's the third major site this month. How are they doing this? Our agents report no survivors. But no bodies either. The victims are left, empty. Like dolls. It's a devil fruit power," Robin deduced, turning to face the Rio poneglyph, her eyes tracing the familiar, ancient characters. "A cruel and precise one. They aren't just killing scholars. They are assassinating our history, one mind at a time. This new unit, Cypher Pol Igus 0, they are not assassins. They are inquisitors. Their target is obvious," Koala said, her voice laced with frustration. "They're trying to find you, Robin. They're burning the entire field of archaeology to the ground to smoke you out." Robin's gaze fell upon a smaller, separate rubbing cloth, this one containing the transcription of the final road poneglyph. It was the key, the final piece of the map to Laugh Tale. A secret she had guarded with her life. The world government believed it was still lost. They didn't know that she, and by extension the Pirate King, already held the map to their complete undoing. "They are looking for this, yes," Robin agreed, "but their purpose is deeper. They don't want to simply hide the Void Century. They want to erase it from all memory, to make it never existed at all. It is a level of fanaticism that transcends mere political control. A quiet alarm chimed, a single, soft note that indicated a breach of the Veritas's outer perimeter. Not a hostile Briac that would have triggered a cacophony of sirens, but an impossible one. Something had bypassed the mists, the currents, and the hockey-sensitive sentries without being identified. Koala and the other evolutionaries in the chamber immediately drew their weapons, forming a protective circle around Robin. Robin herself remained calm, her arms crossed, 1,000 tiny hands ready to bloom into existence at a moment's notice. A figure emerged from the shadows of a towering bookshelf. He moved with a silence that was unnerving, his footsteps making no sound on the stone floor. He wore a familiar black cloak and a crimson tunic, and his presence felt less like an intrusion and more like a missing piece of the room clicking into place. "Your security is good, Robin," Naruto Uzumaki said, a warm smile on his face. The shifting currents synchronized with the perception-altering mist as a nice touch. Almost as good as the genjutsu barriers we used to put around Konoha's archives. The tension in the room evaporated, replaced by stunned silence. Koala lowered her hands, her jaw slack. "Naruto." Robin's composure finally broke, a genuine, radiant smile transforming her face. "How did you? Your sentries are looking for ships. For people moving through the water," he explained, walking towards her. His gaze swept around the library, not with the awe of a tourist, but with the deep respect of someone who understood the value of what he was seeing. "I came through the sky. And I wasn't looking for a ship. In sage mode, I can feel the life of the world. For the past month, I've felt holes. Places where the world's memory, its life story, has been violently scooped out. It felt like a cry for help. So I followed the echo." He stopped before her, his blue eyes locking with hers. There was no pretense, no king addressing a subordinate. It was just Naruto, seeing his friend in the center of a new and terrible danger. "They're hunting you, I'm aware," she said, her composure returning, though her smile lingered. "But this is my fight. The burden of Ohara is mine to carry." "Burdens are lighter when they're shared," he countered gently. "You're the keeper of the world's memory. That makes your fight my fight. This new era we're building, it has to be built on truth, not on the lies of the old world. If they erase the past, we have no future." He looked at the poneglyph rubbing on the wall. "What's their next move?" Quote. The question hung in the air, a simple offer of help so profound it momentarily stole her breath. For 20 years, her knowledge had made her a target, a monster to be hunted. To him, it made her essential. It was the most comforting thing she had ever heard. "There is an island," she began, turning to a sea chart on a massive oak table, her mind already shifting into strategic mode. "The Forgotten Isle of Kronos." It was said to be the home of a civilization that worshipped time itself. The world government scoured it centuries ago, but they missed the subterranean archives. There are texts there that speak of the same era as the Void Century, though from a different perspective. If these inquisitors are as thorough as I believe, they will not be able to resist the temptation to wipe it clean. Naruto nodded, his expression turning sharp and focused. "Then we won't wait for them to knock. We'll be waiting inside when they arrive." He glanced at Koala and the others. "I'll go alone. A smaller signature is harder to detect." "Absolutely not," Robin stated, her voice firm. "This is not a mission for a blunt instrument. It requires subtlety, an understanding of the enemy's methods." Quote. "Good," Naruto grinned, a flash of the old, confident boy she remembered. "Then you'll have to come with me and be the brains of the operation. I'll just be the hammer." The ruins of Kronos were a skeleton picked clean by time. Broken pillars and crumbling ziggurats lay half buried in the island's white sand, the remnants of a people obsessed with the passage of ages. But beneath the surface, a hidden staircase led down into the earth, into the cool, silent dark of the archives. Naruto and Robin moved through the subterranean library like ghosts. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decaying parchment. Naruto, in his sage mode, was a perfect sensor, his eyes glowing with a faint orange light. 3 ships, making landfall on the northern beach, he whispered, his voice barely disturbing the silence. "About 30 signatures. One of them feels wrong. Slippery. Like trying to catch smoke." "The memory wiper," Robin breathed, her hand resting on a stone shelf. Her own observation haki was good, but it couldn't parse details like his. His connection to nature gave him a clarity she could only envy. They're moving with tactical precision. Spreading out. They'll sweep the surface ruins first before looking for a way down, Naruto continued. He placed a hand on the stone wall, closing his eyes. A faint tracery of chakra, invisible to any normal eye, spread from his palm, mapping the entire complex. Let's not make it easy for them. For the next hour, they worked. It was a silent, perfectly synchronized dance. Robin, with her encyclopedic knowledge of ancient architecture, identified structural weaknesses, choke points, and hidden passages. Naruto, using his shinobi skills, laid traps. Not lethal ones, but diversions. A simple tripwire that triggered a small, contained earth-style jutsu to seal a hallway. A paper tag, infused with a flicker of chakra, placed on a weak ceiling support, ready to create a rockslide. He moved with a dancer's grace. A shadow weaving through the ruins, his presence as ephemeral as a thought. They settled in the central chamber, a vast rotunda whose walls were lined with sealed stone cylinders containing priceless scrolls. Robin stood in the center, a defiant silhouette, while Naruto perched in the shadows of the high, domed ceiling, completely invisible. The first of the Inquisitors entered. They were clad in stark white, their faces hidden by emotionless masks. They moved with the cold efficiency of zealots. Their leader stepped forward, his mask a blank canvas of white porcelain, devoid of any feature. He was tall, unnaturally still, and radiated an aura of absolute conviction. Nico Robin, the commander's voice was flat, metallic, filtered through his mask. The last echo of a heresy. You have preserved a history of rebellion, of chaos, of defiance against the divine order. That history ends today. From behind him, a small, hunched man shuffled forward. He had a vacant, placid look on his face, and his hands fluttered nervously at his sides. This was the smoke Naruto had sensed. Demon child of Ohara, the commander continued. You will be our greatest work. When we are done, you will not even remember your own name. You will be a blank slate, a testament to the peace that comes with ignorance. Robin didn't flinch. The peace you offer is the peace of the grave, she said. Her voice echoing in the chamber. A world without a past is a world without a soul. You are the true heretics. The commander simply tilted his head. Erase her. The hunched man's eyes glazed over. He reached out a trembling hand, and a translucent, ghostly hand projected from his own, reaching for Robin. That's when Naruto struck. A single, black rod, a truth-seeking orb molded into a perfect Senbon needle, shot from the ceiling and pinned the memory wiper's ghostly hand to the stone floor. It didn't dissipate. It was held fast. The man yelped, his real hand flying back as if burned. Sorry to interrupt story time. Naruto's voice called out from the shadows. But I think you'll find the library is closed. Before the Inquisitors could react, Naruto dropped from the ceiling, landing between Robin and her would-be assailants. He didn't explode into a golden chakra mode. He didn't summon giant frog bosses. He just stood there, a Rasengan swirling in his palm, its quiet, contained whirring more menacing than any roar. The commander was the only one who didn't show a flicker of surprise. The Pirate King, the usurper god. I should have known the world's greatest Desaya. Say would be drawn to its greatest source of infection. He moved, his speed blurring the air. It was the six powers, perfected. He appeared before Naruto, his finger extended in a Shigen aimed at Naruto's heart. Naruto didn't move. The Shigen struck his chest, and deflected off a swirling, invisible layer of chakra, a subtle application of his tailed beast cloak so thin it was almost undetectable. The commander's eyes widened behind his mask for a fraction of a second. Naruto's Rasengan slammed into the commander's gut. The resulting explosion sent the man flying back, crashing through a stone wall and into an adjacent corridor. The rest are yours, Naruto said to Robin, not even glancing back as he shot after the commander. The remaining Inquisitors charged. Robin's response was immediate and overwhelming. 100 arms sprouted from the floor and walls, a forest of limbs that seized the white-clad agents, pinning them, disarming them, immobilizing them with brutal efficiency. Shi-W walked calmly toward the terrified memory wiper. He tried to project his power again, but a dozen tiny hands sprouted over his eyes and 2 more clamped over his outstretched hands. Your power requires sight and touch, doesn't it? Robin observed, her voice cold. It's a shame. To have the ability to interact with the very soul of a person, and to use it only to leave a void. With a final, decisive gesture, a single, large hand bloomed behind the man and chopped him neatly on the back of the neck, sending him into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, a furious battle raged through the catacombs. The commander was a master of his craft. His every move a textbook application of the 6 powers. He flowed like water, his kicks like iron bars, his movements as fast as thought. But he was fighting a force of nature. Naruto was everywhere at once. Shadow clones flickered in and out of existence, each one a perfect feint, a perfect distraction. He flowed with the commander's attacks, redirecting them, using the man's own momentum against him. It was a battle of ideologies. The rigid, unyielding perfection of the world government's training against the fluid, unpredictable, and overwhelmingly creative style of a shinobi master. Your strength is an illusion. The commander snarled, his leg glowing with the heat of a Renkyaku that sliced the very air. It is the chaotic thrashing of a beast. We bring order. Order, Naruto replied, catching the man's ankle and spinning him into a wall. You call this order? He gestured to the library around them. This is history. This is life. It's messy and chaotic because that's what freedom is. The only thing you're bringing is silence. He formed a Rasengan, but this one was different. It was small, infused with the raw power of nature from his sage mode. He didn't aim for a killing blow. He slammed it into the floor at the commander's feet. The sage art, massive Rasengan didn't just explode. It burrowed. The entire section of the archive collapsed, plunging the commander into a newly formed chasm, burying him under tons of rock and history. Naruto appeared at the edge of the pit, looking down. He had won, not by killing, but by impersoning his foe within the very thing he sought to destroy. In the aftermath, the surviving inquisitors were bound and left for Koala's revolutionary retrieval team. Naruto and Robin stood in the quiet of the main chamber, the dust from their battle settling in the lamplight. Robin ran her hand over a stone cylinder that had been cracked open in the fight. A fragile scroll was visible within. She carefully extracted it. The parchment was ancient, the ink faded, but the words were still legible. This text, it's not about the void century, she said, her eyes wide with discovery. It's older. It's a creation myth from the civilization of Chronos. She read aloud, her voice soft with reverence. In the beginning, there was only the great ocean of will. From this ocean, 2 forces were born. The first was the sun, which sang the song of liberation, and from its melody, life and dreams took form. But where there is a song, there must be a silence to receive it. Thus, the second force was the void, which brought the silent chorus. A promise of peace, of nothingness, of the end of all things. The world turns upon the axis of their eternal struggle. Naruto came to stand beside her, looking at the ancient text. The sun god, and the void bringer. The words resonated with the message from Zephyr's weapon. This wasn't a war against the world government anymore. It was a battle against an ancient, cosmic enemy that the world government was trying to unleash. Robin looked at him, her dark eyes filled with a profound understanding and a sorrow that pierced him to the core. For her entire life, she had carried this burden. The knowledge that could save the world but also made her its greatest target. She had always carried it alone. Robin, Naruto said, his voice serious. You can't carry this by yourself anymore. This isn't just about protecting books. It's about protecting the world's right to have a soul. He gently took the scroll from her hands and set it aside. Then he looked at her, his gaze unwavering, full of a fierce, protective warmth. Your knowledge is the most powerful weapon we have in this war. It needs more than a secret library to protect it. It needs a fortress. It needs a king. He took a deep breath. I'm building a family, Robin. A royal family to stand as the aegis of this new era. A family of the strongest, wisest souls from every sea. To show the world that our strength comes not from one person, but from our union. He held out his hand. Nico Robin, keeper of the Ashen West, the light of revolution. Marry me. Let me share your burden. Let us defend the world's history, together. Tears welled in Robin's eyes. Not tears of sadness or fear, but of a relief so profound it felt like a lifetime of tension was finally washing away. The demon child, who had been taught that her very existence was a crime, was being asked to be a queen. She was not being asked to hide, but to stand in the light. She placed her hand in his. It was warm, strong, and steady. "Yes, Naruto," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes." In the quiet of the ancient archive, surrounded by the ghosts of a forgotten history, the Pirate King's alliance gained its historian, its strategist, and its second queen, and the coming of the silent chorus had just found its most formidable opposition. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Empress of the Serene South. The South Blue, a sea known for its gentle climate and idyllic islands, had learned a new kind of peace under the banner of the Kuja. It was not the fragile peace offered by a distant and corrupt world government, but the fierce, unyielding protection of an empress. Boa Hancock had transformed Amazon Lily from a secluded, man-hating nation into the heart of a burgeoning empire. Her Gorgon sisters, Sandersonia and Marigold, served as brilliant admirals, and her Kuja warriors, once wary of the outside world, now sailed as the proud guardians of the serene sea. They did not conquer, they liberated. They broke the chains of slavers, shattered the ambitions of petty tyrants, and answered the pleas of those the Marines had long ignored. Today, that peace was bleeding. The island kingdom of Apollo was a jewel of the South Blue, famed for its shimmering crystal architecture and pacifist people. Now, its capital city was an armed camp. Gaudy, ostentatious banners bearing the hoof of the celestial dragons hung from the crystal spires, an obscene defilement of their beauty. A fleet of Kuja ships formed a blockade in the harbor, their serpent-headed prows a silent, deadly promise. On the deck of her flagship, the perfumed Hydra, Hancock stared at the occupied city, her beautiful face a mask of cold fury. The situation was an intolerable insult. 3 celestial dragons, the remnants of a disgraced family who refused to accept their fall from grace, had stormed the island. They had taken the Apollon royal family hostage and declared the kingdom their personal property, a last, pathetic attempt to cling to the divine right they believed was their birthright. Ordinarily, it would have been a simple matter. Her warriors could have scaled the cliffs, infiltrated the palace, and put an end to the charade within an hour. But the dragons had a protector. "Report," Hancock commanded, her voice dangerously soft. "No change, Empress," replied Marguerite, her most trusted commander. "Sir Guide, On remains stationed at the palace gates. The Kuja elite guard attempted another assault an hour ago. They were repelled. 7 are wounded, none fatally, but their vitality is low. They report a Kai Ling weakness that our medics cannot explain." Hancock's perfect brow furrowed. Sir Gideon, a former holy knight, one of the legendary protectors of the celestial dragons, who had vanished after the fall of Marihoa. He was a zealot of the highest order, a man who truly believed the blood of the world nobles was sacred. And he was powerful, frighteningly so. His blade, Hancock mused, her crimson eyes fixed on the distant, shimmering palace. The reports say it glows with a sickly light. That it doesn't just cut flesh, but drains it. It's true, Empress, a wounded warrior confirmed from a nearby medical cot, her voice weak. When he cut my arm, it wasn't just pain. I felt empty, like a part of me was stolen. Hancock's fists clenched. This was the stalemate. Her warriors, masters of Aki and trained from birth in the art of combat, could not get close to the knight without suffering this debilitating drain. They couldn't overwhelm him with numbers, and a ranged assault with hockey-infused arrows had proven useless. The man moved like a phantom, his blade deflecting every projectile. He was a one-man army, an impassable shield for the sniveling nobles cowering behind him. They are making a mockery of the new era. Hancock snarled, the temperature around her seeming to drop. They believe their blood still holds power. I will disabuse them of this notion personally. Empress, you can't, Marguerite protested. If you were to fall to that cursed blade. I will not fall, Hancock stated, her voice imbued with the absolute certainty of a queen. Ready my launch. She was about to step toward the railing when a shadow fell over the deck. It wasn't a cloud, it was a ship, descending from the sky as silently as a falling leaf. The vessel was a masterpiece of black wood and crimson sails, a predator built for speed and silence. It was the Shinobi, the ship of the Pirate King. The Kuja warriors bristled, aiming their bows, their initial shock turning to fierce protectiveness. Hancock held up a single, slender hand, and they immediately stood down, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and reverence. The ship hovered a few feet above the water beside the perfumed Hydra. And Naruto Uzumaki leapt from its deck to hers. He landed without a sound, his black pirate king's cloak settling around him. He looked from the blockaded island to the tension in the air, his gaze finally settling on Hancock. A faint blush touched her cheeks, an involuntary reaction she couldn't suppress, but her voice was steady. Naruto, this is my sea, my battle. They're flying a celestial dragon flag, Naruto said. His voice a low, dangerous rumble. His sage mode was already active, his senses stretching across the island, feeling the arrogant, bloated life forces of the nobles, the terrified heartbeats of the hostages. And the cold, fanatical flame that was Sir Gideon. That makes it my business. That flag is a symbol of the world we tore down. Letting it fly is like letting a weed grow back in a freshly tilled field. He walked to her side, standing shoulder to shoulder with her as they looked upon the occupied city. He wasn't taking over, he was standing with her. What's the problem? You could have taken this island in your sleep. A fallen holy knight, she explained, the frustration evident in her tone. Sir Gideon, he wields a cursed blade that drains the life force of those it touches. My warriors cannot get near him. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Life force, he repeated. It was a concept he understood better than almost anyone. So he's a parasite, hiding behind a shield, feeding on others to sustain a rotten cause. He looked at her, a newfound respect in his eyes. She wasn't the lovelorn warlord he remembered. She was an empress, leading her forces, ing a problem she couldn't solve with brute force and searching for a strategic solution. You were going to face him yourself, weren't you? I am the empress. It is my duty to protect my people and my allies, she said with simple, unshakable dignity. A true ruler's words. Naruto nodded, a genuine smile gracing his lips. It wasn't his usual goofy grin, it was a smile of acknowledgement, of one sovereign to another. But a good ruler also knows how to delegate. Let me handle the parasite. You handle the pests in the palace. Hancock's heart fluttered. He wasn't saving her. He was offering a combined assault. He was trusting her to complete her part of the mission while he handled his. It was a partnership. The plan, she asked, her mind already shifting to tactics. Simple, he said, his smile turning sharp, predatory. I'm going to make a very loud entrance. While all eyes are on me, your Kuja get inside and liberate the hostages. You can deal with the trash masquerading as nobles. Without another word, he crouched, gathering power in his legs. I'll see you in the palace for tea. And then he was gone, launching himself from the deck of her ship like a cannonball, a crimson and black blur streaking across the water toward the occupied city. Sir Gideon stood at the gates of the Apollon Palace, a serene and statue. He was a handsome man in his prime, with silver hair and a face that could have been carved from marble. He wore ornate, gleaming plate armor, and in his hand, he held the source of the Kuja's frustration, the blade known as Soulfire. It was a beautiful longsword, its cross guard shaped like angel wings, but its blade shimmered with a faint, sickly green luminescence. He heard the sonic boom before he saw the projectile. He looked up, his expression of calm indifference faltering for the first time. A man was flying through the air, wreathed in an aura of black and red lightning, the unmistakable signature of a supreme king's haki. Naruto landed 50 feet before the gate, his impact cracking the crystal-laced cobblestones. He didn't draw a weapon. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the holy knight. Sir Gideon, Naruto said, his voice casual. Yet it carried across the plaza. I'm the new landlord. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you and your squatters to vacate the premises. Immediately, Gideon's composure returned, replaced by a look of pious disdain. The Pirate King, the great blasphemy made flesh. You reek of a false freedom, a chaotic dream that will plunge the world into darkness. Only the sacred bloodline of the celestial dragons can provide the divine order that humanity craves. That sacred bloodline is currently holding a family of terrified people hostage, Naruto countered, his casual demeanor evaporating, replaced by a cold intensity. There's nothing divine about being a bully and a coward. You're not a knight. You're just a glorified guard dog for a family of thugs. I am a servant of the gods. Gideon roared, his fanaticism flaring. He charged, his speed shocking. He was not a blur. He simply ceased to be in one place and appeared in another, the soulfire blade arcing towards Naruto's neck. Naruto didn't dodge, he simply tilted his head. The blade passed by, missing by a millimeter. The chilling aura of the sword washed over him, and he felt a faint, unpleasant tug. Like a leech trying to latch onto his very soul. It was a potent ability, one that would have crippled any normal fighter. But Naruto's life force was not normal. It was a raging, bottomless ocean of Uzumaki vitality, Kurama's immense chakra, and the pure natural energy of Sage Mode. The sword's drain was like trying to empty that ocean with a teaspoon. It was noticeable, but utterly insignificant. My turn, Naruto said. He spun, a leg sweeping out. It was a simple move, but infused with a crushing amount of power. Gideon brought his sword up to block, and the impact sent a shockwave through the plaza. The knight was sent skidding back, his armored boots carving deep grooves in the stone. He stared at Naruto, his eyes wide with disbelief. His arms trembled from the sheer force of the blow. How? Gideon gasped. You should be weakened. The soulfire drinks the spirit of all it touches. You can't drink the ocean dry, Naruto replied, vanishing in a flicker of speed. He appeared behind Gideon, a Rasengan already formed in his hand. Gideon's combat instincts were superb. He spun, his blade lashing out in a defensive arc. But Naruto was simply a feint, a shadow clone. The real Naruto appeared above, descending with an axe kick aimed at the knight's head. The battle that followed was a spectacle of contrasts. Gideon was the picture of classical swordsmanship, each move elegant, precise, and deadly. He fought with the righteous fury of a man who believed God was on his side. Naruto, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of joyous, unpredictable chaos. He used clones, feints, and misdirection, switching from powerful, earth-shattering blows to subtle, precise strikes at the knight's joints and armor seams. He wasn't just fighting Gideon, he was dismantling him, piece by piece. While the duel raged at the gates, drawing the attention of every guard in the city, the true assault began. The Kuja warriors, led by Sandersonia and Marigold, scaled the sheer crystal walls of the palace like spiders. Silent and unseen, they moved through the halls, a whisper of death, dispatching the celestial dragon's guards with swift, non-lethal efficiency. In the throne room, Hancock made her own entrance. She didn't sneak, she kicked the massive double doors off their hinges. They flew across the room and embedded themselves in the far wall, inches from the head of the sniveling Saint Charlos's idiot son. Who was lounging on the throne? The three celestial dragons shrieked, their faces contorted in ugly masks of fear and indignation. The snake witch, one of them screeched, pointing a trembling, sausage-like finger. Kill her for daring to look upon us. Hancock simply walked forward, her presence filling the room with an aura of absolute dominance. Her beauty was so profound it was paralyzing. But it was the cold, murderous intent in her eyes that froze the blood. You have defiled this sacred place, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You have terrorized its people. And you have insulted the honor of the Kuja. Your divine right ends now. She raised a hand, her fingers forming a heart. Slave arrow. A volley of pink, heart-shaped projectiles filled the air. They were not aimed at the dragons, but at the last of their personal guards. The moment the arrows struck, the men turned to stone, their faces frozen in expressions of lust and adoration. Hancock strode up to the throne, looking down at the terrified noble. Without a word, she grabbed him by his ridiculous bubble helmet and hurled him across the room, where he landed in an undignified heap with his relatives. The Apolline royal family, huddled in a corner, looked on with wide, hopeful eyes. Your reign is over, Hancock declared, planting the heel of her shoe on the cowering noble's chest. It was not a plea. It was a judgment. Back in the plaza, the battle was reaching its climax. Gideon was battered, his pristine armor dented and cracked. He was breathing heavily, his fanatical zeal being ground down by Naruto's relentless, overwhelming power. Why do you not weaken? He demanded, staggering back. What manner of demon are you? I'm not a demon, Naruto said, appearing before him, his face grim. I'm the guy who's tired of people like you using divine right as an excuse to hurt innocent people. True royalty isn't about blood. It's about the will to protect your people, no matter the cost. His words seemed to echo in the air, a declaration of a new creed for a new world. He was speaking to Gideon, but he knew Hancock was listening. He raised his hand, a swirling vortex of black energy forming in his palm, a miniature-tailed beast bomb. It was an overwhelming show of force, an attack that could vaporize the entire palace. Gideon's eyes widened in horror, not for himself, but for the symbol behind him. You would destroy this holy place. Naruto just smiled. Nah. The tailed beast bomb vanished. In its place was a simple Rasengan. He shot forward, slamming it not into Gideon, but into the soulfire blade. The sword, unable to contain the condensed, swirling power, shattered into 1,000 glowing green shards. The captured life force within it was released in a mournful sigh. Washing over the plaza, Gideon stared at the hilt in his hand, his source of power, his symbol of authority, gone. He fell to his knees, a broken man. It's over, Naruto said quietly. From the shattered palace gates, Hancock emerged. She had dealt with the celestial dragons. They were now trussed up and ready for transport to the new Impel Down, stripped of their titles and their dignity. She walked to Naruto's side, her expression unreadable. She had heard his words. She had seen how he fought, not with arrogant pride, but with a clear, unwavering purpose. He hadn't just defeated an enemy. He had defeated an idea. He had shown her, through his actions, what he believed a ruler should be. He turned to her, and the intensity of his gaze made her feel more exposed than she had ever been. See, he said, with a soft smile. Teamwork. Later that evening, the city of Apollo celebrated. The crystal spires were lit with a joyful light, and the sounds of music and laughter filled the air. On a balcony overlooking the festivities, Naruto and Hancock stood in the cool night air. They will be tried for their crimes, Hancock said, breaking the comfortable silence. The World Council will see to it. Good, Naruto replied. The world needs to see that no one is above the law anymore. Not even gods. He turned to her. The celebratory lights cast a warm glow on her face, making her look even more ethereal. But he wasn't looking at the pirate empress, the most beautiful woman in the world. He was looking at the dedicated ruler, the fierce protector, the queen who had stood her ground and fought for her ideals. Hancock, he began, his voice serious. What I said to Gideon, I meant it. A ruler's strength isn't in how many people bow to them, but in how many people they're willing to shield with their own body. You've built an empire here dedicated to that idea. You protect the weak. You bring true justice. You are a true queen. He took her hand. It was soft, but also strong. The hand of a warrior. This new era is fragile. It needs pillars to hold it up. I have the Queen of the East Blue's storms and the Keeper of the West Blue's history. But the South Blue needs its empress. The world needs your strength, your unwavering will. His thumb gently stroked the back of her hand. I'm not asking the lovesick girl who helped me at Marineford. I'm asking the Empress of the Kuja, the protector of the serene South. Boa Hancock, will you marry me? Will you stand beside me, not as a follower, but as an equal, and help me build this new world? Her heart, which had hammered in her chest for years with girlish infatuation, was now filled with a different, deeper emotion. It was a profound, soul-shaking respect. He saw her, not her beauty, not her power, but her. He saw her as a queen, as his equal. He was offering her a throne beside his, not at his feet. Tears, for the second time in her life, traced a path down her perfect cheeks. These were not tears of pain or remembered sorrow. They were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Yes, Naruto, she whispered, her voice thick with an emotion so powerful it was almost overwhelming. My king, it would be my greatest honor. Quote, as he leaned in and, for the first time, gently kissed her, a defeated Sir Gideon was being led away in sea prism stone cuffs. Before he was taken below deck, he looked up at the stars, a final, chilling prophecy on his lips, for any who would listen. You fools, you fight over scraps of land and fleeting titles, he rasped, a mad gleam in his eyes. You know nothing. The celestial dragons are but flawed vessels. But there is a true God, a true sovereign who sits upon the empty throne. When the sun god's rebellion grows too loud, our true God, Amu, will call upon the great silence. The void bringer will come and cleanse this world of your noise, and only the worthy will remain to see the dawn of a silent, perfect world. His words were dismissed as the ravings of a lunatic. But on the shinobi, a listening Den Mushi, linked to Robin's archives, recorded every single word. The third piece of the prophecy had fallen into place. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Matriarch of the Iron North. The air in the North Blue was always cold, but this was the cold of the grave. It smelled of rust and decay, a metallic tang that clung to the back of the throat. On the industrial island of Faraz, the Grand Clock Tower, once a proud symbol of the island's manufacturing prowess, was weeping. Streams of reddish-brown decay ran down its iron face, its hands frozen as if time itself had died. Vinsmoke Reiju stood on the docks, her pink raid suit a stark slash of color against the monochrome ruin of the city. A gust of wind sent a cloud of red dust swirling from a collapsed warehouse. It wasn't dust, it was what was left of the building's steel girders, crumbled into powder. The plague was brutally efficient. It started with a patch of rust, spreading in fractal patterns, consuming metal with terrifying speed. Then, it jumped to organic matter. The bodies of the victims were left desiccated, their skin the texture of brittle, rusted iron, their faces frozen in silent screams. Status report, Reiju said, her voice calm and clinical, a practiced defense against the horror surrounding her. Her helmet was retracted, allowing her modified genes to analyze the very air. The nanite swarm is airborne, Princess Reiju, a Germa 66 scientist reported from their mobile quarantine lab, his voice tinny over her comms. But it's inert. It seems to require a constant broadcast signal to remain active. The signal stopped 2 hours ago, just before the city went completely silent. A weapon with an off switch, Reiju mused. It was diabolically clever. Devastate a target, then shut it down, leaving no active trace to be analyzed. Isolate a sample. I want a full spectral analysis of its power source. This technology is anomalous. She walked through the silent streets, her boots crunching on the powdered remains of what was once a thriving city. This was the third industrial island to be hit in as many weeks. She had brought the full might of the Germa kingdom, no longer a conquering army, but a rapid response force for disaster relief and technological aid, to the North Blue. She was trying to heal this perpetually warring sea, to use her Amelie's science to build rather than destroy. And someone was answering her efforts with an unimaginable plague. It felt personal. It was a direct refutation of her new creed. As she reached the center of the desolate plaza, her enhanced senses detected something. A presence. Not the faint, dying echoes of the plague's victims, but a single, powerful life force, blazing like a sun in the midst of this necropolis. It was approaching. Fast. She turned, her hand instinctively going to the poison canister on her belt. A figure landed in the center of the plaza, kicking up a cloud of red dust. He wore a black cloak over a crimson tunic, and his blonde hair was a defiant torch against the gray sky. Naruto, she breathed, her initial defensive posture relaxing into stunned surprise. He stood up, brushing the rust dust from his cloak. His face was grim, his blue eyes taking in the silent devastation with a heavy sadness. He had his sage mode active, the orange pigmentation around his eyes a clear sign he was sensing the lingering death in this place. Reiju, he greeted, his voice low. Looks like you have a nasty infestation. What are you doing in the North Blue? She asked, her mind racing. The Pirate King did not make social calls. His presence signified a global-level event. Robin's network picked up whispers, he explained, walking towards her. A new weapon, one that eats things. The energy signature is familiar. It has the same empty feeling as the thing we fought in the East Blue. He stopped a few feet from her, his gaze intense. This isn't just some local squabble between kingdoms. This is them, the old guard, pushing back. He didn't question her authority or her ability to handle the situation. He stated a fact, implicitly offering his resources and including her in a war she hadn't even known she was fighting. He was treating her not as Sanji's sister, but as the sovereign leader of the Germa kingdom. I've isolated the nanites, she confirmed, her min-D shifting from crisis management to strategic collaboration. But I can't devise an antidote without knowing the control frequency. To get that, I need to get to the source. And where's that? Naruto asked. The only nation in the North Blue with the theoretical knowledge to create something this advanced, but not the resources, is the sovereignty of Cobalt, Reiju answered, a tactical map already forming in her mind. A pariah state run by a council of amoral scientists. They're based in a fortress laboratory hidden in the Fimbulveter ice fields. It's considered impenetrable. Naruto's lips curved into a sharp, confident grin. No place is impenetrable. Just under-knocked. He looked at her, a silent question in his eyes. He wasn't giving orders. He was waiting for her lead. A frontal assault is suicide, she stated. Rising to the challenge. Their defenses are automated. We'd be destroyed before we got within 5 miles. It has to be a 2-person infiltration. Stealth. Precision. My specialty, Naruto said with a wink. I'll need to get to their central command core to download the plague's source code and control frequencies, Reiju continued, her strategic mind firing on all cylinders. You'll be the distraction. Quote, also my specialty, he grinned. When do we leave? Reiju looked at this man, this force of nature who had toppled the world government. He had come to her for her expertise. He was placing his trust, and the fate of the North Blue, in her hands, in her science. It was a validation of everything she had been trying to build. A stark contrast to the family, who had only ever seen her as a perfectly engineered tool. Immediately, she said, her voice filled with a new, unshakable resolve. Get your ship, I'll meet you at the coordinates. And Naruto, try not to destroy the entire fortress. I want their research data. He gave her a thumbs up. Just the parts that are trying to kill us. Promise. The Cobalt Citadel was a jagged spike of black metal and reinforced concrete driven into the heart of a vast glacier. Automated turrets, powered by geothermal vents, scanned the endless blizzard for threats. It was a monument to paranoia and brutalist architecture. 2 figures moved through the storm like wraiths. Reiju, her raid suit's cloaking system rendering her a faint shimmer against the snow, and Naruto, using a low-level chakra shroud to bend light and sound around him. To the Citadel's sensors, they were nothing more than a trick of the swirling snow. They reached the base of the fortress, a sheer wall of ice-slicked steel. Sub-level access vent, 300 feet up. Reiju whispered, pointing. Thermal exhaust. It's the only unshielded entry point. Naruto nodded. He created a single shadow clone. Then, using each other's backs and feet as launching points, the 2 Narutos and Reiju scaled the wall in a series of perfectly synchronized, gravity-defying leaps, a technique so fluid and bizarre it would have broken the mind of any military engineer. They slipped into the vent system, a maze of humming, heated tunnels. Reiju took the lead, a holographic schematic of the facility projected from her wrist gauntlet. Her mind was a supercomputer, cross-referencing the schematics with the Citadel's power grid fluctuations to predict patrol patterns and security sweeps. 2 cyborg sentries, approaching the next junction, she murmured. Heavy armor, heat and motion sensors. I've got it, Naruto whispered back. 2 puffs of smoke, and a pair of shadow clones flickered into existence. They sped down the tunnel in the opposite direction and began making a racket. Banging on the walls, the cyborgs, their programming prioritizing the louder threat, turned and clanked away from their post. They moved like this for an hour, a perfectly oiled machine. Naruto's creative application of shinobi techniques provided the openings. Reiju's cold, hard data analysis provided the path. They were a union of instinct and intellect, the impenetrable fortress folded before them. They reached the door to the central command core. Bioscanner, DNA locked, quantum encrypted, Reiju assessed. This will take me a few minutes to bypass. I'll buy you some, Naruto said. He looked down the main corridor. Besides, I think the welcome party's here. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Heavy blast doors slammed shut. At the far end of the hall, a tall, gaunt figure in a pristine white lab coat appeared, flanked by a dozen hulking figures in advanced combat armor. Germa's old designs, but bulkier, cruder. Vinsmoke Reiju. And the Pirate King, the man in the lab coat said, his voice amplified, dripping with academic condescension. It was Dr. Malachi Kane, the Sovereignty's chief scientist. An unexpected honor. You see, Princess, your father's dream was not wrong, merely inefficient. He sought to perfect a single bloodline. I seek to perfect the world by excising its imperfections. The Rust Plague is merely the first phase of a global treatment plan. You're a murderer, Kane, Reiju shot back, her fingers flying over the keypad on the door lock. I am a visionary, Kane corrected. And you, Pirate King, are the greatest imperfection of all. A chaotic variable in a carefully balanced equation. An equation generously funded by the SSG, I might add. They were quite keen to see Germa's new, humanitarian, direction fail. He gestured to his soldiers. Eradicate the variable. The soldiers charged. Naruto met them head-on. He became a blur of motion, not of overwhelming power, but of precise, targeted strikes. He didn't try to punch through their armor. He flowed around them, his fingers jabbing at the exposed wiring in their joints, his palm strikes targeting their internal power cores. A Rasengan, small and controlled, was applied not as a bomb, but as a drill, disabling a cyborg's leg. It was the shinobi art of dismantling the puppet, not shattering it. Behind him, Reiju worked, her face a mask of concentration. The lock was complex, layers of code folding in on themselves. But her mind was built for this. She saw the patterns, the backdoors, the elegant, hidden flaws in the system. With a final click, the lock disengaged. I'm in, she yelled. Naruto slammed a giant Rasengan into the last of the cyborgs, sending it flying back down the hall, and then zipped into the command core with rage. Just as the blast door sealed behind them. The room was a sphere, its walls covered in glowing lines of code. In the center was a pulsating orb of dark energy, the broadcast antenna for the Rust Plague. He's initiating the final protocol. Reiju shouted, plugging her gauntlet into the main console. Accelerated replication. He's going to overload the core and consume the entire glacier. On the room's main view screen, Kane's smug face appeared. Checkmate, princess. You cannot stop the signal and escape. Enjoy your final contribution to science. Code scrolled down Reiju's visor. The virus is rewriting itself. I can't create a counter frequency until I can stop the mutation. Naruto looked at the pulsating core. He could feel it, the same unnatural, life-draining void energy he'd felt before. Then hold it still. He flew at the core, wrapping his entire body around it. The golden chakra of his Biju mode flared to life, a desperate attempt to contain the seething void energy. It was like trying to wrestle with a black hole. The energy chewed at his chakra, draining him, but he held on, his muscles straining, his teeth gritted. Do it, Reiju, now, he grunted, the golden cloak flickering violently. Seeing him, her protector, willingly sacrificing his energy for her, broke through her clinical focus. A fire ignited within her. This was her science, her responsibility. With a cry, she poured all of her focus into the console, her fingers a blur. She wasn't just a Vinsmoke anymore. She was a scientist, a doctor, a protector. She isolated the core mutation, locked it, and began writing the counter code. A healing algorithm to fight the digital plague. Done, she yelled, slamming her palm on the activation key. A wave of pure, white energy pulsed from the antenna. Across the North Blue, on Faraz and the other blighted islands, the reddish-brown dust began to dissolve, turning into harmless, inert matter. The plague was neutralized. Naruto let go of the core, collapsing to one knee, breathing heavily. The room was safe, but on the screen, Kane was laughing. Fools. Did you think it was that simple? The antenna is set to overload. Goodbye, Pirate King. The core began to glow white-hot. Reiju looked at Naruto, then at the core, and in an instant, made a decision. She leapt in front of him, her raid suit's back deploying a shimmering purple energy shield, her own personal technology. Poison shield. It can absorb the energy, but I don't know for how long. Naruto looked at her, at this woman who had spent her life being told she was only a tool, now willingly shielding him. Ready to sacrifice herself. He saw not a princess or a scientist, but a true matriarch, protecting her own. Reiju, he said, his voice soft. He placed a hand on her back, not to push her aside, but to support her. He poured his own chakra, not into an attack, but into her shield, reinforcing it, stabilizing it. Together, the core exploded. Their combined shield held for a single, critical second, absorbing the brunt of the blast before shattering, sending them both flying. They came to amidst the wreckage. The citadel was collapsing around them, but the core of the fortress had held. They were bruised, battered, but alive. They stood in the silence of the ruined command core, the only light coming from the emergency strobes. Your technology. You turned your poison into a shield, Naruto said. His voice full of awe and respect. Science is a tool, Reiju replied, her voice shaky but firm. It can be used to kill, or to protect. For too long, my family chose the former. I'm trying to choose the latter. She finally looked at him, her violet eyes full of an emotion he couldn't quite decipher. You trusted my science. You bet your life on it. Of course I did, Naruto said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I didn't come to the North Blue for a weapon. I came for a brilliant scientist who I knew could solve an impossible problem. I came for you. He stepped closer, his presence a source of warmth in the cold, ruined metal of the room. Reiju. This world, it's sick. Not just with wars and politics, but with people like Cain, who want to enforce their will. Who believe they have the right to cure the world by killing it. This new era needs more than just strength to survive. It needs progress. It needs healing. It needs a mind that can turn poison into medicine. He gently took her hand. Her fingers, usually covered by a glove, were cold, but they trembled slightly at his touch. Vinsmoke Reiju, matriarch of the Iron North, the smartest person I've ever met. I'm building a new kind of royal family. One built on shared purpose, not on blood. I need your brilliance. I need your compassion. Marry me. Help me heal this world. Reiju stared at him, her mind, which could process a million lines of code in a second, completely blank. Her entire life had been a series of commands. Follow father. Protect Sanji. Lead Germa. No one had ever asked her what she wanted, or valued her for who she was, not what she could do. He wasn't asking for the Germa army or her raid suit. He was asking for her. For her mind. For her heart. A single tear, the first she had shed since she was a child, traced a path down her cheek. Yes, she whispered, the word feeling foreign and wonderful on her lips. Yes, Naruto. As the Germa king, Dom's ships arrived to extract them from the collapsing fortress. A Germa scientist handed Reiju a data slate. Princess, the analysis of the nanite core is complete. It's impossible. The energy sign, Atur, doesn't conform to any known physical laws. It's not generating power. It seems to be siphoning it from a literal point of nothingness. A microscopic hole in our reality. Reiju looked at the data, the jagged, chaotic energy readings. She cross-referenced it with the file Robin had sent her from the East Blue. The signatures were a perfect match. The Rust Plague, Zephyr's dead zone weapon. They were all powered by the same impossible source. The Void, and the world government's secret science division knew how to harness it. The war was not just coming. It was already here, being fought. In the shadows with weapons they were only beginning to understand. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Voice of the Golden Oasis. The Great Hall of Alubarna was a testament to a kingdom's resilience. Sunlight, filtered through vast, intricate stained glass windows, painted the marble floors in strokes of sapphire, emerald, and gold. For centuries, this hall had witnessed declarations of war, the signing of treaties, and the coronation of kings. Today, it was the amphitheater for the birth of a new world. The World Council was in session. Kings, queens, prime ministers, and elected leaders from over 50 nations sat at a grand circular table, a deliberate design choice to signify equality. At its head, not on a throne but in a simple, elegant chair, sat Queen Vivi Nefertari of Alabasta. She wore the traditional white robes of Alabastan royalty, but her bearing was anything but ceremonial. She was sharp, focused, her gaze missing nothing. She had become the anchor of this fragile new assembly. Her voice a beacon of reason and unwavering hope. The reports from the North Blue are encouraging, Vivi announced, her voice clear and carrying, silencing the low murmur of conversation. Queen, Reiju's deployment of the Germa medical fleets has successfully neutralized the Rust Plague. Trade routes are expected to reopen within the week. This is a testament to what we can achieve when we cooperate. When we lend our strength to our neighbors not for conquest, but for mutual preservation. A wave of applause and relieved murmurs went through the hall. It was a rare piece of good news in a series of tense sessions. The transition from the world government's iron-fisted rule to this new era of self-governance was proving to be a treacherous one. Old rivalries, long suppressed by the threat of a buster call, were resurfacing. Trust was a currency in short supply. A commendable achievement, to be sure, a smooth, melodious voice interjected. All eyes turned to Lord Valerius of the island nation of Sonara. Valerius was handsome, charismatic, with silver-streaked hair and a statesman's poise. His nation had been one of the first to be liberated from a tyrannical monarch by Naruto's allied fleets. And he had risen to power on a wave of popular support. He was considered one of the council's most progressive voices. However, Valerius continued, rising to his feet, we must not be blinded by these isolated victories. The Rust Plague, as horrific as it was neutralized by the Vinsmokes, a royal family. The crisis in the South Blue was averted by the Empress of the Kuja, a former warlord. The chaos in the East was quelled by the Pirate King himself. He spread his hands, his expression one of earnest concern. Do you not see the pattern? We have traded one centralized, absolute authority for a collection of powerful individuals who operate outside any law but their own. We celebrate their intervention now, but what happens when their interests no longer align with ours? What happens when the Pirate King decides he wants a greater tribute than our gratitude? The hall fell silent. He had given voice to the fear that lingered in the heart of every leader present. They had embraced Naruto's revolution. But the man himself was an entity of terrifying, world-shattering power. He was their savior, but he was also their greatest potential threat. The Pirate King seeks no tribute, Vivi countered. Her voice firm, cold. He seeks only the freedom that was denied to all of us for 800 years. A noble sentiment, Queen Vivi, Valerius said with a sad, knowing smile. And one I am sure you believe. Your personal history with the man is well known. But we are not crafting a world based on personal friendships. We are crafting it with laws, with checks and balances. Absolute power, no matter how benevolent it may seem today, will inevitably corrupt. We are living in an age of pirates, and we are trusting our fate to the greatest pirate of them all. It is a precarious peace. Before Vivi could respond, the great doors of the hall boomed open. 2 royal guards were thrown aside, not by force, but by a presence so immense it seemed to suck the very air from the room. Naruto Uzumaki stood in the doorway. He wasn't in his Pirate King's cloak. He wore simple black pants and a crimson tunic, and was in the middle of taking a large bite out of a roasted piece of Sandora dragon. He chewed thoughtfully, his gaze sweeping over the silent, stunned assembly of world leaders. Hey, Vivi, he said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber, blissfully unaware of the tension he had just shattered. Sorry I'm late. Got held up in the north. You would not believe the size of the robot I had to fight. Anyway, I'm starving. Is there any more of this lizard meat? A vein throbbed in Vivi's temple. Agaram, her most loyal advisor, looked like he was about to faint. Lord Valerius, however, simply smiled. It was a perfect, predatory smile. Naruto had just proven his point for him. He was not a king. He was chaos in human form. You can't just burst into a summit of world leaders demanding food. Vivi hissed, pacing back and forth on the private balcony of her royal suite. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the palace gardens. Naruto sat on the railing, unfazed, finishing off his meal. Why not? I was hungry, and they're just people. They wear fancy hats, but they're still just people. They are the leaders of the free world, Naruto. They are terrified. They've spent their lives under the thumb of the Marines and the Celestial Dragons. And now their freedom has been handed to them by a man who can destroy an island with a flick of his wrist. They need reassurance, stability, diplomacy. Not this. She gestured vaguely at his entire, casual being. That Valerius guy, Naruto said, changing the subject, his eyes becoming serious. I don't like him. Vivi stopped pacing. Lord Valerius is a respected leader. He is a voice of caution in a turbulent time. He's a voice of fear, Naruto corrected. He hopped off the railing. When I was in sage mode, back in the hall, I could feel the room. Most of them are just nervous, anxious. But his emotions are like a perfectly calm pond. Too calm. It's not natural. He was saying all those things, making people afraid, but he wasn't feeling any of it. He was performing. Vivi stared at him. She had been so focused on the political calculus, the nuances of the debate, that she had missed the simple, human truth of it. Naruto, for all his lack of decorum, saw things with a clarity she sometimes envied. And there's something else, Naruto added, his brow furrowed. He's wearing this little charm on his wrist. It feels dirty, like the rusty plague in Zephyr's weapon. It's faint, but it's the same kind of wrongness. A chill went down Vivi's spine. What are you saying? I'm saying he's a fake, Naruto said simply. And he's trying to tear down everything we've built before it even has a chance to stand. The crisis came 2 days later. A vital grain shipment, sent from Alabasta to the drought-stricken kingdom of Lulusia, was attacked and sunk. There were no survivors, but a piece of wreckage washed ashore bearing a tattered flag, the emblem of the Whitebeard pirates, now under the command of Marco the Phoenix, one of Naruto's most steadfast allies. The council was in an uproar. Valerius took to the floor, his voice ringing with sorrowful fury. It has happened, just as I feared, he declared. The Pirate King's allies run rampant. They take what they want, and we pay the price. Alabasta's gift of life now lies at the bottom of the sea, and the people of Lulusia will starve. Is this the freedom we were promised? The freedom to be plundered by a new set of tyrants? The accusation was explosive. The king of Lulusia was apoplectic. Old fears flared to life. The fragile trust that had been built began to crumble. Vivi stood, her hands gripping the podium. Marco would never do such a thing. He is a protector, a doctor. This is a lie, Queen Vivi. Or a truth you cannot bear to face. Valerius countered gently. We have the evidence. It was the perfect political assassination. It was aimed not at Naruto directly, but at the foundation of his new era, the trust between pirate and civilian. That night, in the war room of the Alubarna Palace, the mood was grim. The currents don't match, Nami said, her voice sharp over a long-range visual Den Mushi. She was in her command center in the East Blue, but a perfect projection of her tactical map filled the center of the room. For that wreckage to wash up where it did, the ship would have had to be sunk 200 miles south of the reported attack zone. It's staged. It's a frame job. But the evidence is what they believe, Vivi said, her head in her hands. Valerius is calling for a vote tomorrow. He wants to establish a council guard, a centralized military force under the command of, well, it's not explicitly stated, but his supporters are pushing for him to lead it. He also wants to place heavy sanctions and restrictions on all known pirate crews, including those allied with Naruto. It would be the end of the alliance. It would be a return to the old ways, just with a new face in charge. Naruto was quiet. He stood before a map of the world, his back to them. He had been silent for most of the meeting, just listening. Naruto, Vivi asked tentatively, what are we going to do? He turned, and his face was calm, decisive. The goofy boy was gone. This was the Pirate King. He's using lies to make them afraid, Naruto said. So we'll use the truth to give them hope. He looked at Nami's projection. Nami, I need you to find that ship. The real one. Already on it, she replied with a grim smile. The Azure Fleet is sweeping the entire sector. He then looked at a second Den Mushi, this one projecting the shadowy form of Robin. Robin. Valerius. I want to know everything. Where he was born, what he ate for breakfast, every dirty secret he has. I need the truth. My network is already at work, Robin's calm voice replied. The truth has a way of leaving ghosts behind. We will find them. Finally, he looked at Vivi. His expression softened. Vivi, tomorrow, you're not going to argue with him. You're just going to hold the floor. Buy me some time. I need to make a speech. Vivi's eyes widened. A speech. Naruto, this is a delicate political situation. You can't just. I'm not going to talk about politics, he interrupted gently. I'm going to remind them why we started this fight in the first place. He put a hand on her shoulder, his sincerity a palpable force. I can't do this without you. You're their queen. They trust you. I just need you to trust me. Vivi looked into his eyes and saw no doubt, no fear. Only an unshakable resolve. She took a deep breath. All right, Naruto. I trust you. The Great Hall was a tinderbox. Valerius had delivered a masterful oration, a symphony of fear and righteous indignation. He spoke of stability, of order, of protecting the common man from the chaotic whims of pirates. He was winning. The vote was all but a certainty. Then, Queen Vivi took the floor. She did not argue. She did not present counter-evidence. She began to tell a story. She spoke of her childhood, of a kingdom choked by sand and lies, of a mysterious organization called Baroque Works. She spoke of a group of foolish, reckless pirates who had stumbled into her life and, against all odds, chose to help. She spoke of friendship, of sacrifice, of a promise made under a star-filled desert sky. Her story was personal, heartfelt, and it held the room spellbound. She was filibustering, but she was doing it with the soul of her kingdom. She was reminding them that this new world wasn't built on grand political theories, but on small, impossible acts of trust. As she spoke, Naruto walked into the hall. He strode to the center of the room, and all eyes turned to him. Vivi concluded her story and yielded the floor to him. Naruto looked at the faces of the world's leaders. He saw fear, doubt, suspicion. He took a deep breath. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he began, his voice simple, direct. "I'm a pirate. I'm not smart like a lot of you. I don't know big words. I'm not a politician, but I know what it feels like to be alone. I know what it feels like to be looked at like you're a monster. And I know what it feels like when someone, just one person, chooses to believe in you." He looked at Vivi, a flicker of a grateful smile on his face. "For centuries, the world government told you that you needed them. That without them, there would be chaos. They told you that pirates were evil, that freedom was dangerous. They used fear to keep you in line. They made you afraid of each other, so you would never be strong enough to be afraid of them." He began to walk around the circular table, making eye contact with the leaders. "This man," he said, gesturing to Valerius, "he's singing the same old song. He's telling you to be afraid. He's telling you that my friends, people who have bled to protect the innocent, are your enemies. He's using a lie to sell you the same old chains you just broke free from." He stopped in front of the king of Lulusia. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry for your people's hunger. It's a tragedy, but it is a tragedy born of a lie. The Whitebeard pirates didn't sink your ship." "Then who did?" the king demanded. Just then, the grand doors opened. A group of bruised, weary sailors entered, their clothes still damp. They were the crew of the grain ship. At their lead was Marco the Phoenix, his arm transformed into a blue wing of flame, supporting the ship's injured captain. "We did," Marco said, his voice tired but strong. "We rescued them. Their ship was attacked by a fleet of unmarked, black-sailed vessels. We saved who we could. Nami's fleet is tracking the attackers as we speak." A gasp went through the hall. Valerius's face, for the first time, went pale. Naruto continued, his voice rising with passion. "This is the truth. The truth is that we help each other. The truth is that a pirate doctor and a Queen's Navy worked together to save these men. We are not what the world government told you we were. We are people, some are good, some are bad. Just like you." He turned his gaze back to Valerius, his eyes hard as diamonds. "And you, Lord Valerius, or should I say, Agent 8 of Cipher Pol Igus 0. Born in Marihoa, trained as an infiltrator your entire life. Your mission, to destabilize this council and restore the natural order." Every word was a hammer blow, delivered to him in real time through a tiny, invisible earpiece by Robin. Valerius was cornered, his calm facade shattered, replaced by a snarl of pure hatred. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" Naruto replied. A projection screen flickered to life behind him, displaying records, secret transmissions, incontrovertible evidence of Valerius's identity, compiled by Robin's network and delivered in that very instant. The hall erupted. Guards moved to seize Valerius. But he was not done. "You want chaos? I'll give you chaos," he screamed, raising his arm. The charm on his wrist began to glow with a malevolent, black light. "Fear is the true god of this world. Fear him." A wave of pure, psychic dread washed over the hall. It was a tangible force, amplifying every doubt, every suspicion, every dark thought in the minds of the leaders. Arguments broke out. Accusations flew. The assembly was about to devolve into a panic mob. Naruto closed his eyes. He didn't shout. He didn't fight, he simply willed. He poured out his own haki, not the intimidating force of a conqueror, but the vast, warm, unshakable will of a protector. It was the feeling of a promise kept, of a friend's trust, of a bowl of ramen shared after a hard fight. It was the sheer, indomitable power of his belief in people. The golden light of his will met the black wave of fear. For a moment, they struggled. Then, with a sound like cracking glass, the black charm on Valerius's wrist shattered, its power dissolving into nothing. In the sudden silence, every leader in the room stared at Naruto, not with fear, but with a profound, dawning sense of awe. They had felt his spirit. And it was not the spirit of a tyrant. It was the spirit of a guardian. That night, on the same balcony, Naruto and Vivi watched the stars come out over a kingdom at peace. The council was united, stronger than ever. The lie had been defeated by the truth. You were incredible, Vivi said softly, her shoulder brushing against his. You're a terrible politician, you know that. Hey, he protested with a grin. But you're a magnificent king, she finished, her voice full of warmth and admiration. I can't do it alone, though, he said, his smile fading into something more serious. He turned to face her, taking both of her hands in his. Vivi, I can punch my way through an army. I can even win over a room full of stuffy old people, apparently. But I can't build a world. Not the right way, not without a voice that speaks of reason, and compassion, and hope. A voice that people will listen to, not because they're afraid, but because they believe. His blue eyes were filled with a sincerity so deep it made her heart ache. This new world needs a heart. A diplomatic core that will hold it together when guys like me aren't around. It needs a queen who understands the burden of her people because she has carried it her whole life. He squeezed her hands gently. Nefertari Vivi, queen of the golden oasis, the voice of Alabasta. Marry me. Be the heart of our new world. Be my queen. Vivi looked at the man before her. The goofy, pirate boy who had helped save her kingdom. The powerful warrior who had toppled gods. The king who had bared his soul to the world to give them hope. He was offering her a throne not of power, but of purpose. A partnership to realize the dream they had shared since they were teenagers. Tears of joy streamed down her face. She didn't bother to wipe them away. You took you long enough, you idiot, she whispered through a radiant, cheerful smile. Yes, of course, yes. As they embraced under the desert stars, the fragments of the shattered whispering stone were being carefully collected by one of Robin's hidden agents. The analysis would reveal its true nature, an amplifier of negative emotions, a tool designed to turn hearts and break alliances. A weapon of the Void Bringer. The enemy was not just attacking with fleets and plagues, but with whispers in the dark, turning their very emotions against them. The war for the soul of the world had truly begun. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Princess of the Abyssal New World. Peace was a strange and wonderful new sensation for Fishman Island. For centuries, their home had been a place of shadowed fear, of persecution from the surface, of internal strife. Now, floating beneath the red line, the island existed under the personal protection of the Pirate King. The Jolly Roger that flew from the Ryugu Palace, the Uzumaki swirl superimposed Veer the classic skull and crossbones, was not a mark of conquest, but a promise. It was a shield that no slaver, bounty hunter, or arrogant noble dared to test. This new peace was shattered by a tremor that shook the very soul of the ocean. It wasn't an earthquake. It was deeper, more primal. The colossal bubble that encased the island groaned, the water outside churning with a directionless, panicked energy. In the coral hills, mermaids and fish men cried out in alarm as their homes shuddered. Then came the voices, not spoken, but felt. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror that washed through every sentient creature on the island. The Sea Kings. From the abyssal depths surrounding Fishman Island, the gargantuan, ancient guardians appeared. They did not speak in words, but in emotions that crashed into the minds of the island's inhabitants. Their usual deep, rumbling wisdom was gone, replaced by a chorus of fear. The great sleepwalker is awake. A voice like the grinding of continents echoed in every mind. Pain, a shard of silence in its ancient mind. It thrashes, cried another, a voice like a deep-sea current. It comes, the shadow that swallows the sea. In the opulent halls of the Ryugu Palace. Princess Shirahoshi collapsed to her knees, her tiny hands pressed to her temples, tears streaming down her face. She felt it more keenly than anyone. A psychic scream of such magnitude. It felt like the ocean itself was being torn apart. It was a sound of pure, mindless agony, a creature of unimaginable size in a pain so profound it had become a force of world-ending rage. Shirahoshi, her eldest brother, Crown Prince Fukabashi, rushed to her side, helping her up. "What is it? What do the Sea Kings mean? It's so big," she sobbed, her body trembling. "And it hurts so much. It doesn't know what it's doing. It only knows pain." King Neptune, his massive frame seeming small in the face of this new threat, floated to the main viewing bubble, his trident gripped tightly in his hand. "All forces to the defense lines. Evacuate the outer districts. What in the name of the sea are we facing?" The answer came as a shadow. A darkness that began to fall over the entire island, blotting out the soft, ambient light from the eve sunlight tree. It was a shadow so vast, so complete, it felt like a celestial body was eclipsing them. But it wasn't in the sky. It was in the water. A creature of impossible scale was rising from the trench. Its body was a continent of ancient, barnacle-encrusted flesh. Its eye, a single, baleful orb of milky white, was larger than the entire royal palace. The legends had called it the Leviathan, a creature from the dawn of time, a primal force of nature that was never meant to awaken. And it was heading directly for Fishman Island. The Neptune army's cannons fired, their explosive shells bursting against its hide like pathetic fireflies. The creature didn't even register their attack. Its course was unaltered, its psychic scream of agony intensified. It was going to swim through Fishman Island as if it were nothing more than a cloud of seaweed in its path. In the face of this apocalypse, Shirahoshi felt the familiar grip of helpless terror seize her. She was Poseidon, the one who could command the Sea Kings. But this was not a Sea King. This was a god of the sea, and it was mad. Just as despair began to settle over the palace, a new light appeared. It was a golden light, a miniature sun that streaked through the water and came to a silent stop beside the main palace bubble. It was the shinobi. Before anyone could even hail it, a figure cloaked in blazing golden energy phased through the bubble wall, landing silently on the palace floor. Naruto Uzumaki stood there, his Sage Biju mode already in full blaze. The chaotic, terrified energy that filled the palace seemed to calm in his presence, soothed by the warm, steady hum of his chakra. He wasn't looking at the king or the princes. His gaze, glowing with a mixture of blue and orange, was fixed on the trembling form of Shirahoshi. His senses were screaming. He felt two things with absolute clarity. The first was the life force of the Leviathan, a power so immense and ancient it made the 10 tails feel like a house pet. The second was the source of its madness. It was a signal, a high-frequency pulse of energy that felt empty. It was the same void signature, magnified 1,000 times. A spike of pure wrongness driven into the creature's mind like a nail. "Your cannons won't work," Naruto said, his voice calm and absolute, cutting through the panic. He walked towards the royal family. "You can't fight an ocean. You can't kill a mountain." He stopped in front of Shirahoshi, his golden aura casting a gentle light on her tear-streaked face. He didn't look down on her. He looked at her. "But you," he said softly, "you can talk to it." Shirahoshi flinched, shaking her head. "I can't. It's too loud. The pain, it's all I can hear." "That's not its voice," Naruto countered, his conviction unwavering. "That's the sound of the nail in its head. Its real voice is buried underneath all that noise. I can't pull the nail out from here. But I can build you a bubble of silence. I can get you close enough to be heard." Fukabashi stepped forward, his hand on his sword. "Pirate King, what you ask is impossible. It is a suicide mission." Naruto didn't take his eyes off Shirahoshi. "It's the only mission we've got." He held out a golden, chakra-formed hand to the mermaid princess. "I can't do this without you, Shirahoshi. They need their queen to be brave. I need you to be brave." Shirahoshi looked at his outstretched hand, then at his eyes. She didn't see the Pirate King or a terrifyingly powerful warrior. She saw the kind boy who had promised to take her to see a real forest one day. She saw someone who was not telling her what to do, but asking for her help, placing the fate of everyone in her hands because he believed she could handle it. He wasn't relying on his own power. He was relying on hers. A new strength bloomed in her chest, pushing back the fear. She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and placed her small hand in his massive, golden one. "I'll do it." The scale of the Leviathan was incomprehensible. As Naruto flew towards it, carrying Shirahoshi within a protective sphere of his own chakra, the world dissolved into a landscape of ancient flesh and crushing water pressure. The currents thrown off by the creature's passage were like hurricanes, powerful enough to tear warships apart. Debris, rocks, pieces of sea floor, the wreckage of unlucky ships from centuries past, swirled in the chaos. "It's not enough," Naruto grunted, the golden sphere shuddering under the strain. "I need more power." He flared his chakra, summoning the full might of Kurama. A colossal avatar of golden energy, a nine-tailed fox bigger than any giant, materialized in the ocean. It braced its 6 arms against the chaotic currents, its tails whipping around to bat away building-sized chunks of rock. Naruto and Shirahoshi were now safe within the avatar's massive, fox-like head, looking out through its glowing eyes as if from the bridge of a warship. The avatar was a stable island in the middle of an apocalypse. "Okay, Shirahoshi," Naruto said, his voice echoing slightly inside the chakra construct. "The shield is stable. The signal is being blocked. It's all up to you now. Find its voice." Shirahoshi closed her eyes, her form small and delicate within the immense golden head of the 9 tails. She reached out with her mind, past the chaos, past the pain. At first, all she felt was the psychic static, the wall of manufactured madness. It was still there, a roaring fire at the edges of Naruto's shield. She felt a wave of doubt. It was still too strong. Then, she felt a new sensation. It was a gentle, warm pressure enveloping her own consciousness. It was Naruto. He wasn't just shielding her physically, he was lending her his will. He was projecting his own unwavering faith in her directly into her mind, a silent, powerful encouragement. "You can do it, Shirahoshi. I know you can." Bolstered by his strength, she pushed harder. She didn't fight the wall of static. She flowed around it, searching for a crack, a single, quiet note beneath the cacophony. And then she found it. A tiny, faint whimper. The sound of a gentle giant, crying in its sleep. Her consciousness broke through. She was no longer in the ocean. She was in a vast, dark, and lonely space, the Leviathan's mind. In the center of that space was a magnificent, sleeping creature. Its thoughts as slow and deep as the turning of the planet. And driven into its forehead was a pulsating shard of pure blackness, the source of the signal, the source of the pain. Shirahoshi did not recoil, her heart filled with a profound, overwhelming empathy. This wasn't a monster, it was a victim. She didn't try to command it. She didn't try to wake it. She began to sing, not with her voice, but with her soul. She projected feelings of peace, images of calm, sun-dappled waters, of quiet, deep trenches where no pain could reach. She showed it the joy of the sea kings as they swam. The laughter of the mermaids on Fish-Man Island. She offered it comfort. She promised it peace. She promised to help. The great beast in the dreamscape stirred. Its ancient, slow thoughts turned towards her, not with anger, but with a dawning curiosity. The psychic screaming that had been tearing the ocean apart began to subside. Outside, the Leviathan's rampage slowed. Its massive, unseeing eye, an eye that had not truly focused on anything for millennia, rolled in its socket. It tilted its colossal head, and for the first time, it saw the golden fox avatar floating before it. It saw the tiny princess within. A sound rumbled from its chest, a sound so deep it vibrated through the bones of the world. It was not a roar of rage, but a mournful, grateful cry. It understood. Slowly, ponderously, the great beast began to turn. Its path of destruction forgotten, it lowered its head and began to descend, returning to the silent, dark trenches from whence it came, seeking the peaceful slumber the princess had promised. When they returned to Fish-Man Island, they were met with a joyous, roaring celebration. The shadow had passed. The threat was gone. The people were not cheering for the Pirate King, but for their princess. They chanted her name. Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi. She was no longer the crybaby princess hidden away in a tower. She was Poseidon. She was their savior. Later, in the quiet, ethereal beauty of the sea forest, Naruto found her. The gentle light of the Eve tree filtered through the giant tree roots, illuminating the silent graves of Queen Otahime and Fisher Tiger. Shirahoshi was floating before her mother's grave, telling her everything that had happened, her voice soft but full of a newfound confidence. The Sea Kings hovered nearby, their massive forms radiating a calm, paternal pride. Naruto approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt. But she sensed him and turned, a shy but radiant smile on her face. "Naruto-sama," she said. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who did it all," he replied, stopping beside her. "I just held the umbrella. You stopped the hurricane." He looked at her, truly seeing the strength she now possessed. "Your power, it's not for fighting. It's for understanding, for connecting. In a world full of people shouting, a voice that knows how to listen is the strongest thing there is." He grew serious, his gaze full of a profound respect. "Shirahoshi, I'm trying to build a new world, one where people don't have to be afraid anymore. I have queens who can command the storms, who hold all of history, who can heal any wound. But the sea has a soul, a voice, and you are the only one who can speak for it." He moved in front of her, his expression gentle and earnest. "I need that voice in my family. I need a queen whose strength is compassion, whose power is empathy. A queen to remind us all that we should be talking to each other, not fighting." He bowed slightly, a king showing his respect to a princess. "Princess Shirahoshi of the Abyssal New World, the true voice of the ocean. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife, and my queen?" Tears welled in her eyes, but for the first time. They were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of pure happiness. She had found her place in the world, not as a weapon, but as a heart. She gave a joyful, watery laugh. "Yes, Naruto-sama," she cried, her voice ringing with delight. "Yes." The Sea Kings let out a collective, rumbling sound of approval, a deep and joyful chorus that echoed through the forest. Much later that night, aboard the shinobi, a call came through. It was Robin. Her voice was grave. "Naruto," she said, her projected image looking grim. "Nami's fleet and Reiju's deep-sea drones have triangulated the source of the signal that drove the Leviathan mad. It's a device, an artifact of some kind, lodged in the Ryujin Trench, not far from the coordinates for Laugh Tale." A schematic appeared in the air next to her. It showed a bizarre, spiraling piece of black metal, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to hurt the eyes. "I found a reference to it in the Chronos texts," Robin continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "It matches a description of an ancient doomsday artifact. They called it the Void Collar. The texts claim its purpose is to disrupt the natural life song of the planet. To create a dissonance so profound that it calls out to the great silence from the stars. It doesn't just cause chaos, Naruto. It's a tuning fork. It's preparing the world for the coming of the Void Bringer." The joy of the day's victory evaporated, replaced by a cold, sobering dread. The enemy wasn't just throwing monsters at them. They were performing a ritual. They were setting the stage for the end of the world. And the first note had already been struck. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Sword of Unwavering Justice. The island of Marineford was a scar on the world, a place of ghosts and echoes. But under the leadership of Fleet Admiral Smoker and a council of reformist vice-admirals, it was being rebuilt, not as a symbol of absolute justice, but as a bastion of a new creed: civilian justice. Protection over provocation. Peace over prosecution. The new Marine organization was a fragile entity, an attempt to redeem the very soul of the Marines. This new soul was currently under siege from within. Grand Admiral Tashigi stood on the shattered remnants of the execution platform, the sea breeze whipping her dark hair across her face. Below her, the main plaza was a scene of ideological civil war. Marines were fighting Marines. The crackle of hockey, the clang of steel, and the roar of Geppo echoed where the shouts of pirates and the thunder of cannons once had. Her opponent was a living legend, a ghost from the Marines' Golden Age. Vice Admiral Kogarashi, the Winter Gale, a man who was once Garp's greatest rival, a Rokushiki master of such renown that his Soru was said to be faster than light. His Shigan capable of piercing a mountain. He had come out of retirement with a faction of old guard traditionalists, denouncing Smoker's reforms as weakness, as a betrayal of everything the Marines stood for. "You are a disgrace to that blade," Kogarashi roared, his voice like grinding ice. He was a powerfully built old man, his gray hair tied in a warrior's topknot, his face a roadmap of 1,000 battles. He wore his old admiral's coat like a king's mantle. The Shodai Kidetsu is a weapon of ultimate authority, a blade that craves the blood of the lawless. You wield it like a peacekeeper's baton. Tashigi stood her ground, the cursed blade held in a ready stance. She had spent years mastering its bloodlust, not by suppressing it, but by aligning its thirst or supreme skill with her own quest for a supreme, protective justice. The blade's violet aura was calm, controlled, an extension of her own unwavering will. Justice is not about authority, Vice Admiral, Tashigi countered, her voice clear and steady over the din of battle. It's about protecting the innocent. Your absolute justice burned down Ohara and enabled the celestial dragons. It is a failed ideal. Heresy. Kogarashi snarled. He vanished, not with a flicker, but with a complete cessation of presence. He reappeared directly in front of her, his leg a glowing arc of a perfect Rankyaku. It wasn't just a blade of wind. It was imbued with an advanced armament haki so dense it looked like black ice. Tashigi met the blow with the flat of her blade. The impact was titanic. A shockwave erupted outwards, shattering the plaza floor for 50 yards in every direction. She was driven back, her sandals carving deep trenches in the stone. Her arms screamed in protest. The sheer, brutal power of the old man was beyond anything she had ever faced. But it was more than just power. There was a wrongness to it. A cold, nihilistic rage that felt hollow. It wasn't the passionate fury of a zealot, it was the empty, destructive anger of a storm. The 5 elders have given me a blessing, Kogarashi said, pressing his attack, his movements a relentless, flowing dance of absolute mastery. They have shown me the truth. This world, this era of pirates and false freedom, it is a disease. And the only cure is a great and final purge. The winter gale will freeze the heart of this pathetic revolution, and from the ice, a true, silent order will be born. His fingers, coated in the same black ice haki, stabbed towards her heart in a shigen. Tashigi twisted, the blow glancing off her pauldron, shattering it and sending a wave of chilling, strength-sapping cold through her body. This was not normal haki. This was something else, something dead. As she staggered back, creating distance, a new variable entered the battlefield. It was a flash of crimson and black, a presence that landed between the two combatants with the force of a thunderclap. Naruto Uzumaki stood there, his back to Tashigi, his gaze fixed on the old vice admiral. He didn't say a word. He just raised a hand, catching Kogarashi's next haki-infused punch in his open palm. The air cracked. The ground beneath Naruto's feet fractured into a spiderweb of cracks. But he didn't move an inch. You've got a little something on your soul, old man, Naruto said, his voice dangerously quiet. His sage-mode eyes were blazing. And they weren't just seeing Kogarashi. They were seeing the small, dark shard of something embedded in the man's chest, a splinter of pure void that was supercharging his haki while poisoning his mind. It was the same energy he'd felt from Valerius's charm, from the void collar, but this time it was integrated, weaponized, fused with a living being. Kogarashi's eyes widened in shock. He tried to pull his fist back, but it was held fast. So, the Pirate King comes to defend his pet marine, the old admiral sneered, trying to regain his composure. I came to help a friend who's fighting for the right thing, Naruto corrected. His grip tightening. And you're just a puppet. They gave you a little taste of their power, and it broke your brain. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto threw the legendary vice admiral back. Kogarashi landed lightly on his feet 50 yards away, his expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. Naruto didn't press the attack. He turned his head slightly, not taking his eyes off the enemy. You all right, Tashigi? Tashigi pushed herself up, her shoulder aching with a profound, unnatural cold. Naruto, this is a marine matter. My fight. He's using a power that isn't from this world. Naruto stated, the words leaving no room for argument. That makes it my fight, too. He shot her a quick, confident grin over his shoulder. Besides, when have you and I ever been on opposite sides when it really mattered? A memory flashed in her mind. Standing back to back with him, a rogue captain then, fighting off hordes of pirates on a lawless island. He had been an enemy of the law. But he had never been an enemy of justice. Not her justice. A reluctant smile touched her lips. Fine. But don't get in my way, Pirate King. Wouldn't dream of it, Grand Admiral, he chuckled. What followed was not two individuals fighting one enemy. It was a symphony of combat. Naruto was the percussion, a whirlwind of overwhelming power and unpredictable tactics. He engaged Kogarashi head-on. His tailed beast arms, coated in the shimmering gold of his chakra, meeting the Vice Admiral's black ice hockey in shattering blows that sent shockwaves across the entire island. He was the unstoppable force, drawing the enemy's full attention, weathering the storm of the old man's perfected Rokushiki. Tashigi became the scalpel, while Naruto was the shield, she was the sword. She flowed around the edges of their cataclysmic duel, her observation hockey pushed to its absolute limit, no longer just predicting moves, but seeing the very flow of the battle. She wasn't looking for an opening to land a decisive blow on Kogarashi. She was looking for a flaw in his power. She saw it. When Kogarashi used his void-infused hockey, there was a fractional delay, a moment where his body had to adjust to the unnatural energy. It was a heartbeat, less than a heartbeat, but it was there. His perfect, flowing movements had a single, discordant stutter. Naruto, his center, she yelled. The power is unstable, I need a clean shot. Naruto heard her. He didn't need a longer explanation. He grinned. One clean shot, coming right up. He disengaged, creating a dozen shadow clones that instantly swarmed Kogarashi. Each one an expert in a different form of hand-to-hand combat. While the Vice Admiral was momentarily bogged down, shredding through the clones with furious efficiency, the real Naruto shot into the sky. He gathered a massive amount of nature energy. The air itself seemed to grow heavy around him. Sage art. Massive Rasengan. He roared, a colossal sphere of spiraling energy forming in his hands. But he didn't throw it. He held it, the sheer gravitational force of the attack drawing debris and dust from the plaza into its vortex. It was the ultimate distraction. Kogarashi, his senses screaming at the world-ending attack forming above him, had no choice but to look up, to brace for an impact that would obliterate half the island. That was the moment Tashigi had been waiting for. She moved. Her Soru was no longer just a high-speed step. It was a perfect, instantaneous movement, a technique honed not for killing, but for one perfect strike. She appeared directly before the distracted Vice Admiral. Her blade, Shodai Kitetsu, did not glow with a thirst for blood, but with the pure, focused light of her own will, her own hockey. It was the culmination of her entire journey. The perfect union of a cursed sword and a righteous soul. She did not aim for his head or his heart. She aimed for the splinter of darkness in his chest. Your justice is a lie, she whispered. Mine is to protect. Her blade struck true. There was no clang of steel on flesh. The sword plunged into Kogarashi's chest, and the tip of the Kitetsu struck the void shard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the cursed blade's true nature flared to life. It was a blade that judged, that tested the supremacy of its wielder. It recognized the void shard as an impurity, an ultimate affront to the concept of a true living will. A violet, hungry light erupted from the sword, and it began to devour the void energy. Kogarashi screamed, a sound of pure agony as the unnatural power was ripped from his very soul. The black ice hockey shattered like glass, and the old man collapsed, the light of fanaticism in his eyes fading, replaced by a weary, human confusion. High above, Naruto grinned and dispelled the Rasengan. The threat was over. In the aftermath, the loyalist Marines, led by Smoker, quickly subdued the rest of the old guard. The coup was over. Kogarashi, stripped of his blessing, was taken into custody. No longer a demigod of destruction, but just a tired, misguided old man. Naruto and Tashigi stood on the deck of a marine cruiser, watching the sun set over a damaged but secure marineford. The silence between them was comfortable, the easy quiet of two warriors who had found a profound respect for each other in the crucible of battle. That power he was using, Tashigi began, breaking the silence. What was it? The beginning of the real war, Naruto said grimly. He explained everything. The dead zone, the memory wipers, the rust plague, the void collar. He told her of a hidden enemy, of a cyclical struggle between a sun god and a void bringer. He laid the truth of the world bare before her. Tashigi listened, her expression growing more serious with every word. She was a woman who dealt in facts, in evidence. What he was describing was the stuff of myth, of madness. But she had felt that cold, dead power with her own hands. She knew he was telling the truth. So the world government isn't just corrupt, she concluded. They are actively trying to end the world to maintain their control over it. Pretty much, Naruto nodded. We're fighting a war on two fronts. One against the remnants of the old world, and one against the apocalypse they want to unleash. He turned to face her, his sea blue eyes full of a fire she had come to admire. Tashigi, he said, his voice earnest. This new era can't be just about pirates and revolutionaries. It needs a symbol of true justice. It needs a marine organization that people can trust, that isn't afraid to stand up to the powerful. No matter who they are. It needs you. He saw her not as Smoker's subordinate, not as a woman trying to prove herself in a man's world. He saw her as the Grand Admiral she was. The unwavering moral compass of the new Marines. I'm building an alliance, a family to protect this world. A family of rulers. And you are the queen of your own kingdom. A kingdom of ideals, of unwavering justice. He smiled. A genuine, warm thing. I need that. The world needs that. Grand Admiral Tashigi, you are one of the strongest people I know. Will you marry me? Will you be the word and shield of justice for our new world? Tashigi was floored. A proposal, here, now, from the Pirate King. It was illogical, absurd. And yet, it made a strange kind of sense. Their paths had crossed so many times. They were enemies by definition, but allies in spirit. He fought for freedom, she fought for justice, and they were both beginning to realize they were just two different words for the same thing. He wasn't asking her to abandon her duty. He was asking her to elevate it, to make her justice a pillar of the entire world. A slow, shy smile spread across her face. It was a rare and beautiful thing. You are the most wanted criminal in the history of the world, she said, stating a fact. Yup, he replied cheerfully. Marrying you would be a catastrophic breach of every regulation in the book, she continued. Probably, he agreed. She looked out at the horizon, at the setting sun painting the sea in hues of crimson and gold. She thought of the justice she had always chased, a clean, simple thing she had read about in books. Then she thought of the justice she had found, a messy, complicated, and human thing, fought for alongside a pirate with a heart of gold. She turned back to him, her eyes shining with a new, fierce resolve. Yes, Naruto, on one condition. Name it. We spar. Once a week, she said, a challenging glint in her eye. I still have to take you in one day, you know. Naruto threw his head back and laughed, a loud, joyous sound that echoed over the quiet waters of the bay. You've got a deal, Admiral. As the first stars appeared, a coded report W. As sent to Smoker from Tashigi's personal Den Mushi. It was a formal request for a leave of absence, citing cross-factional alliance building and matrimonial proceedings. Smoker, sitting in his new fleet admiral's office, read the message, took a long drag from his two cigars, and let out a cloud of smoke that formed a perfect question mark. Then he sighed and stamped the approval form. The world had gone mad, but maybe, just maybe, it was the right kind of mad. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Architect of the Sweet New World. The global economy was not a living thing, but it was dying. It started subtly. Grain prices in the West Blue tripled overnight. Key shipping lanes in the Grand Line were disrupted by a fleet of ships that appeared on no radar, left no survivors, and vanished without a trace. The flow of berry, the lifeblood of commerce, was stagnating. Ports that were once bustling were now silent, their workers starving, their warehouses empty. Panic, the currency of the desperate, was the only thing in high supply. At the center of this collapsing web sat the nation of Toto Land. Under the new, iron-fisted yet profoundly logical rule of Charlotte Praline, it had been transformed from Big Mom's whimsical nightmare into the world's breadbasket and manufacturing hub. Islands made of candy had been repurposed into vast, hyper-efficient factories. Rivers of juice were now irrigation canals for hardier, sweeter crops. Praline, a hammerhead shark mermaid with a mind like a finely tuned abacus, had saved her family and her nation by making them indispensable. But even Toto Land was buckling. Praline stood in the Situation Room of the Whole Cake Chateau, now stripped of its garish decorations and converted into a global logistics center. Dozens of Den Mushi chattered with frantic reports. Huge blackboards were covered in production schedules, shipping manifests, and increasingly bleak economic forecasts. Praline, dressed in a tailored business suit that did nothing to hide her imposing stature and sharp teeth, was a whirlwind of activity. Reroute the wheat convoy 7 through the calm belt. Use the Sea King engines. She barked at a terrified homie. Tell the Minister of Jam to switch production to high-calorie emergency rations immediately. And get me a direct line to the Bank of the Underworld. I need to secure a loan to buy out the South Blues Ent. Ire rice harvest before the price spikes again. Lady Praline, Katakuri, her brother and the head of Toto Land's defense forces, strode into the room. He was without his scarf, his scars bared, his expression grave. We've lost contact with the sugar fleet. 20 heavy galleons, gone. Right in the middle of our most secure shipping lane. Praline slammed a fist onto the table, cracking the wood. Pirates. No, Katakuri said, his voice low. My future sight, it failed. I tried to look at the moment of the attack, and all I saw was nothing. Just gray static. A blind spot in time itself. Praline's blood ran cold. Ghost ships that defied detection. Attacks that couldn't be foreseen. A coordinated, global assault on the very concept of trade. This was not piracy. This was economic extermination. They're trying to starve the world, she realized, the horror of the realization settling in. Create dependency. Make the nations beg for the world government to come back and save them. Just then, the main doors to the Situation Room flew open. No guards announced the arrival. None were needed. Naruto Uzumaki walked in. He looked exhausted. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his usual crimson tunic was stained with salt and soot. He had been awake for a week, using his shadow clones to patrol shipping lanes, escort convoys, and fight fires across 4 seas. But even the Pirate King couldn't be everywhere. He walked straight to the main map table, grabbing a untouched decorative pastry and devouring it in 2 bites. Katakuri. He nodded to his former rival, then turned his attention to Praline. Status. Catastrophic. Praline replied bluntly, appreciating his directness. We have enough food in storage to feed the Grand Line for a month. But we can't move it. Every convo I send out gets hit by these phantom fleets. If we don't break this blockade within a week, mass starvation begins in the outer blues. Naruto looked at the map, his mind racing. He wasn't a strategist in the traditional sense. But he understood flows. Chakra flows, currents, the flow of people. Right now, the flow of the world was blocked. These phantom ships, Naruto said, tapping a reported attack site on the map. Nami's fleet engaged one yesterday. They don't have crews. No life signs. When her lightning hit them, they didn't burn. They just crumbled, turned into black dust, like the stuff from Zephyr's bomb. Constructs. Praline deduced instantly. Automated raiders. Efficient. Emotionless. Relentless. And connected to the big bad, Naruto added grimly. They're tightening the noose. Okay, we can't fight them ship to ship. There's too many, and we can't predict where they'll be. He looked at Praline, his blue eyes intense. We need to change the game. We can't use the ocean anymore. Praline frowned, her sharp teeth clicking together thoughtfully. You want to move millions of tons of food without using ships? That's impossible. Air transport capacity is negligible. Portal fruits are too rare and have range limits. Naruto grinned, a tired but genuine spark of his old creativity flaring to life. Who said anything about air or portals? We're going to use mirrors. Praline's eyes went wide. She looked at Katakuri, then back to Naruto. The mirror world. Brulee's domain. A dimension that connected every mirror on the planet. It's theoretically possible, she stammered, her mind already running the calculations. But the logistical nightmare. We'd need to establish receiving hubs in every major kingdom, coordinate mirror placements, build infrastructure inside the mirror world itself to handle heavy cargo. You're the logistics genius, Naruto said, placing his hands on the table and leaning in. I handle the impossible. You handle the nightmare. Can you do it? Praline looked at the map. At the dying world. She looked at her brothers and sisters, working frantically around her. Then she looked at Naruto. He was handing her a problem of planetary scale and trusting her, explicitly. To solve it, he wasn't demanding a miracle, He was offering a partnership to create one. A fierce, predatory grin spread across her face. Give me 24 hours to set up the network. And tell Brûlé she's about to become the most important person in the world. The next 48 hours were a blur of organized chaos. Toto Land transformed. Its factories didn't stop, they accelerated. But instead of loading ships, thousands of homies, Charlotte siblings, and citizens formed conveyor lines leading into massive, ornately framed mirrors set up in the plazas. Inside the mirror world, it was a surreal scene. In a dimension of endless checkerboard floors and floating mirrors, a vast, improvised railway system was being built by Cracker's biscuit soldiers and Perospero's candy constructs. Under Praline's tireless direction, broadcasted through a network of Den Den Mushi, millions of tons of grain, preserved meats, and medical supplies were being routed. Convoy Alpha, through the Alabasta mirror. Now, Praline roared into a transponder. Convoy Beta, hold for the Dressrosa portal to stabilize. Move, move, move. Outside, in the real world, Naruto was fighting a different kind of battle. He was at the largest logistical hub, a massive mirror set up on Cacao Island. His job wasn't to move boxes, it was to protect the gateway. The Phantom fleets, sensing the shift in the world's flow, had changed tactics. They were no longer attacking ships. They were attacking the islands themselves, amphibious assault crafts made of black, shifting shadow matter pouring onto the beaches. Their crews were silent, faceless humanoids that dissolved into black dust when struck. Naruto stood on the beach, a one-man army. Thousands of shadow clones were engaged in a frantic melee along the coastline. It was a battle of attrition. For every shadow soldier he destroyed with a Rasengan, 2 more seemed to rise from the surf. He couldn't use his massive, land-destroying attacks for fear of hitting the logistical center behind him. He had to fight up close, personal, and endlessly. Keep them moving, Praline. Naruto shouted over the comms, panting HEAV. Illy as he kicked the head off a shadow soldier. I'll hold the door. Inside the command center, Praline watched the monitors. She saw Naruto fighting, a golden beacon against a tide of darkness. She saw the tonnage reports. They were doing it. Food was reaching the starving nations. The panic was subsiding. The global heart was starting to beat again. But the Shadow Army was endless. Naruto's NES were popping out of existence faster than he could make them. His chakra, vast as it was not infinite. He can't keep this up, Katakuri said, standing beside her, his knuckles white as he gripped his trident. I must go to him. No, Praline ordered, her voice trembling slightly but resolute. Your duty is to defend the chateau. If this command center falls, the whole operation collapses. Naruto knows what he's doing. She grabbed the microphone. Naruto, we're at 80% capacity. Just hold on a little longer. On the beach, the real Naruto was forced to his knees, surrounded by hundreds of shadow soldiers. His golden mode flickered and died. He was running on fumes. A silent soldier raised a blade of solidified shadow to strike. Is this it? Naruto thought, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. Defeated by hunger and cargo logistics. Suddenly, the mirror gateway behind him pulsed. It wasn't cargo that came through. It was an army. Sanji, Zoro, Jinbei, Frankie, the core of his old crew, burst onto the beach. Followed by thousands of warriors from the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Sorry we're late, Captain. Sanji yelled, kicking a shadow soldier into oblivion with a flaming leg. Traffic in the mirror world was murder. We heard you were having a beach party, Zoro smirked, drawing his swords. Didn't want to miss it. With fresh reinforcements, the tide turned instantly. The Shadow Army was pushed back into the sea and annihilated. Days later, the crisis was officially over. The mirror world supply lines were established, a permanent, unassailable trade network. The world was fed. The Phantom fleets, having failed in their objective, dissolved back into the nothingness they came from. A massive victory banquet was held in Whole Cake Chateau. It was a riot of color, food, and laughter. Former enemies toasted each other. The Charlotte family and the Straw Hat Grand Fleet mingled freely. On a balcony overlooking the festivities, Naruto and Praline stood together. They were both exhausted, holding mugs of hot cocoa. You did it, Naruto said, looking out at the reborn, bustling nation. You saved the world with a spreadsheet and a mirror. We did it, Praline corrected, taking a sip of her cocoa. Your idea, my execution, your defense, my family's labor. It was the most efficient operation I have ever been a part of. She smiled, a surprisingly warm expression that showed off her sharp teeth. It was exhilarating. Naruto looked at her. He saw a woman of supreme capability, a ruler who valued order and prosperity above all else, a genius who organized chaos into a symphony of productivity. Praline, he said, turning to face her fully. This war isn't over. They'll try something else, something bigger. I need someone who can keep the world running while I'm busy saving it. I need an architect, someone who can build systems that are stronger than any weapon. He placed a hand over hers on the balcony railing. I'm not asking for an alliance. I'm asking for a partner. Charlotte Praline, matriarch of the sweet new world, genius of logistics. Will you marry me? Will you be the one who builds the foundation of our future? Praline looked at him. For her whole life, she had been defined by her mother's madness, valued only for who she could marry to forge a political alliance. Naruto was offering her a marriage based on respect for her mind, her competence, her ability to lead. It was the most logical, most beneficial, and surprisingly, the most flattering proposal she could imagine. A partnership based on mutual optimization of global resources and defense. She mused, a playful glint in her eyes. The cost-benefit analysis is overwhelmingly positive. She put her mug down and took his hands in hers, her grip firm and confident. Yes, Pirate King, let's build a world that can never be broken. As they shook hands on their engagement, down in the deepest, most secure vault of Germa's labs, Reiju and Robin were analyzing a sample of the residue left behind by a destroyed shadow soldier. It's not matter, Reiju said, her voice trembling. It's antimatter, stabilized by a consciousness. A hive mind. The silent chorus, Robin whispered, reading from a translated text. The Void Bringer does not just erase. It replaces. It creates a hollow mockery of life to pave the way for its arrival. The enemy was not just destroying their world. It was actively overriding it. The final confrontation was drawing near. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The War at the World's End. The sea around the final island did not rage. It was unnervingly still. The water a flat, black sheet of glass under a sky choked with motionless, bruise-colored clouds. There was no wind. There was no sound. No cry of a gull. No crash of a wave. It was a perfect and absolute silence. A vacuum that seemed to drain the very life from the air. This was Laugh Tale, the island of joy and treasure, and it had been transformed into the world's tombstone. At the heart of the unnatural calm, the island itself was a nightmare of twisted physics. The landmass writhed, its trees and mountains contorted as if in agony. Above it, a swirling vortex of pure nothingness tore at the sky. A hole in reality. Feeding this vortex were two terrible streams of power. From a hidden bay, the colossal, cannon-studded hull of the ancient weapon Pluton glowed with a hellish internal fire. Its energy being siphoned away. And circling the sky, a majestic, bird-like creature of living energy, Uranus, captured and enthralled, cried a silent, psychic scream as its OWN life force was drained into the ritual. Standing before the vortex was a slender, regal figure in flowing white, its face hidden by shadows, its form indistinct. Before this being, knelt the five elders, no longer robed politicians, but transformed into monstrous, demonic figures, their bodies warped by the void energy they were channeling. They were the high priests of the apocalypse. Then, the silence was broken. It began as a single point of light on the horizon, which grew into 1,000 lights. The Grand Fleet had arrived. At its head was the shinobi, its crimson and black a defiant slash of color against the oppressive gray. Flanking it were the flagships of the New World. The Weather Witch, the perfumed Hydra, the mobile fortress of the Veritas, the Germa Kingdom's fleet, and 100 other vessels. Their sails bearing the crests of every nation that had thrown its lot in with the new era. It was the largest armada in the history of the world, a united front against the end of all things. On the bridge of the shinobi, Naruto stood with his queens, a royal family assembled for their final war. The storm is a barrier of null energy, Reiju reported, her raid suit's sensors working overtime. Conventional passage is impossible. It will drain the life from the crews and dissolve the ship's hulls. It's not a storm, Nami countered, her eyes closed, her hands resting on the ship's railing as she felt the very pulse of the atmosphere. It's a cage. It's holding the world's weather hostage. Her eyes snapped open, blazing with defiant fire. And I'm here to pay the ransom. She strode to the prow of the ship, her klima tacked in hand. All ships, prepare for a gale force entry. On my mark. Nami raised her staff to the dead sky. She didn't shout. She didn't summon a tempest. She reached out with her will, with her profound connection to the sea and sky, and she reminded them how to move. She sent a single, pure note of her own haki into the stagnant air, a command for the wind to blow. For the clouds to churn. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the world answered. A single breeze stirred, then another. The clouds began to move, slowly at first, then faster. Spiraling around a point of Nami's choosing. She wasn't fighting the silent storm. She was pulling the real world's weather into it, overwhelming the null energy with the raw, chaotic power of life. A hurricane, her hurricane, tore a path through the silence, creating a corridor of raging, living wind and sea straight to the shores of Laugh Tale. Go, she screamed. The grand fleet charged into the breach. A spear of hope driven into the heart of the void. The battle that erupted was total. Imu's forces, a fleet of shadowy, automated warships and legions of the silent, dust-like soldiers, rose from the black waters to meet them. Hancock, aboard the perfumed Hydra, took the vanguard. For love, and for our king, she cried, her voice imbued with the haki of a conqueror, a clarion call. That bolstered the spirits of the entire fleet. Show them the strength of the Kuja. Her slave arrows turned entire squadrons of shadow soldiers to stone, her warriors boarding the enemy ships with the fury of avenging angels. From the depths, the sea itself joined the fight. Shirahoshi, safe within the armored bridge of a Germa vessel, her mind shielded by Naruto's protective chakra, sent out her call. Dozens of sea kings, their eyes ancient and full of wrath, rose from the abyss. They were immune to the void's life-draining properties, their sheer biological mass too immense. They crushed the shadow fleets from below. Their roars a primal answer to the unnatural silence. The energy readings from Pluton are off the charts. Reiju yelled over the fleet-wide comms, her fingers flying across a console. If it overloads, it will destroy this entire quadrant of the ocean. I need to get a team to its core. A German mothership broke from the formation, its advanced shields flaring as it made a desperate run for the bay where the ancient weapon was docked. On another front, Tashigi and the new marine fleet engaged the five elders. It was a battle of gods. One elder transformed into a colossal, elephant-like beast, another into a winged demon of shadow. They were beings of immense power, and the marines were outmatched. But Tashigi was their anchor. Her Shodai Kitetsu, now a blade of pure, unwavering justice, flashed through the chaos, deflecting blows that could shatter battleships, her presence a symbol that this was a fight for the soul of the world, not just a war between pirates and the government. From the floating library of the Veritas, Robin's voice was the calm, strategic center of the hurricane. The ritual has 3 focal points: Pluton, Uranus, and a central altar on the island's peak. The elders are the conduits. We must sever their connection to the flow of energy. Her words directed the flow of battle, turning a chaotic brawl into a precise, targeted assault. And Praline, from a massive mirror erected on the deck of the Shinobi, was the battle's logistical heart. Reinforcements from Wano are entering the Dressrosa portal now. Medical supplies to Hancock's vanguard. Reroute all damaged vessels to Mirror Point Delta for repairs, she commanded, turning the mirror world into the ultimate force multiplier. But the ritual was accelerating. The vortex in the sky grew larger, its silence more profound. Naruto knew his time was up. He looked at his wives, at the magnificent, impossible orchestra of war they were conducting. Keep them busy, he said, his voice grim. He placed a hand on Vivi's shoulder, who was coordinating the various allied fleets, her calm voice preventing panic and ensuring they fought as one. Hold the line. We will, she promised, her eyes full of fierce, absolute trust. Naruto took a deep breath and cloaked himself in the blazing gold of his full power. He shot from the deck of the Shinobi, a golden comet that streaked over the battle. Ignoring the fleets and the armies, his eyes fixed on the peak of the island, on the shadowy figure of Amu. He was met with a wall of silent, black energy. He smashed through it. Legions of shadow soldiers materialized in his path. He tore through them, a Recentrican clearing a path a mile wide. He was not fighting with strategy or subtlety. He was a force of nature, a living Biju bomb aimed at the heart of the enemy. He landed on the peak before the altar. The 5 elders were too engaged with the Marines to stop him. He stood before the architect of it all. A moo. The figure turned, and for the first time, Naruto saw its face. It was neither male nor female. It was beautiful, ancient, and utterly devoid of emotion. Its eyes were twin pools of liquid night. The sun rises. Imu's voice whispered in his mind, a sound of dry leaves skittering across ancient stone. So bright, so loud. It is time for the sunset. It is time for peace. For the great silence. The vortex above pulsed, and from its center, a wave of unreality descended. It was not a creature. It was not energy. It was a presence defined by its absence. The Void Bringer had arrived. The ground it touched did not shatter or burn. It simply ceased to be. Color, sound, matter, energy, all were erased, leaving behind a patch of perfect, flat nothingness. It was an anti-genesis, the uncreation of the world. Devil fruit users across the battlefield screamed as their powers flickered and died. Haki, the manifestation of will, faltered against a foe that had no will, only an endless, patient hunger. Naruto stared at the advancing wave of nothingness. So that's you, he growled. He formed a tailed beast bomb Recentrican, the most powerful destructive force in his arsenal, and hurled it at the Void Bringer. The attack flew into the void, and vanished. It was unmade before it could detonate. There was no explosion, no sound. It was simply gone. Naruto's golden cloak flickered. The sheer proximity to the void was draining his power. His very life force, at an alarming rate. He couldn't punch it. He couldn't blow it up. How could he fight something that wasn't there? A moment of genuine despair, cold and sharp, pierced his heart. Then, Robin's voice, calm and clear, echoed in his mind through a Den Mushi link. Naruto, you can't destroy it. The poneglyphs were clear. The song of liberation cannot defeat the silent chorus by shouting louder. You have to contain it. You must give the silence a vessel to be silent in. It's a sealing ritual, Naruto. A global scale jutsu. The words hit him like a lightning bolt. A sealing jutsu. Of course. He was a ninja. The son of the 4th Hokage. Sealing was in his blood. The wives are the keys. Robin's voice continued, urgent. The texts speak of the sun god needing the 8 pillars of the world to hold up the sky. They must anchor the seal. You are the lock. Naruto understood. He looked out at the battle, at his queens. Nami, commanding the storms. Hancock, leading the charge. Reiju, dismantling a god weapon. Vivi, holding their world together. Tashigi, the embodiment of their ideals. Praline, fueling their fight. Shirahoshi, the voice of the planet itself. And Robin, the keeper of the truth. His family, the 8 pillars, everyone. Naruto's voice boomed, amplified by his chakra, cutting through every channel, reaching every ship, every soldier. I have a plan. Trust me. He flew into the air, directly before the advancing void, planting his feet in the sky. He closed his eyes and began to draw upon a power he hadn't used in years. He began molding the raw chakra of the 10 tails, not into a weapon of destruction, but into a matrix, a complex, world-sized sealing formula. His wives heard him. They understood instantly. Without hesitation, they moved. Nami flew to the northern point of the island, using her mastery of the weather to create a stable eye in the hurricane. Hancock broke from the vanguard, taking the southern point. Reiju and Tashigi took east and west. Vivi, Praline, and Shirahoshi formed an inner triangle, their ships acting as anchors. And Robin, aboard the Veritas, positioned herself directly opposite Naruto, the final anchor. Now, Naruto roared. He became a conduit. The 8 queens poured their will, their haki, their very life force into him. A shimmering golden chain of energy erupted from Nami. A fierce crimson one from Hancock, a cool violet from Reiju, a brilliant white from Vivi, a deep blue from Shirahoshi, a sharp silver from Tashigi, a solid bronze from Praline, and a shadowy, character-etched chain of pure knowledge from Robin. The 8 chains of power converged on Naruto, who roared as the immense energy coursed through him. He wove them together, using his Uzumaki bloodline's gift for sealing. And cast the net. A sealing array of unimaginable size and complexity spread out from him, a net of golden light that sought to encompass the entire island, to capture the Void Bringer and Amu along with it. Insignificant gnat, Imu's voice shrieked in his mind. You cannot seal away the end. Amu raised its hands, and the full power of the void pushed back against the net. The strain was immense. Naruto's golden cloak shattered. Blood poured from his nose and eyes. He felt his life force being burned away like a cheap candle. He was going to fail. Then, he felt it. Not just the power of his wives, but the will of the world they represented. From across the planet, every soul he had touched. The people of Alabasta, the warriors of Wano, the fishmen, the Kuja, the new Marines, their hopes, their dreams, their desperate prayer for the dawn, flowed into the Grand Fleet, through the queens, and into him. He was no longer just Naruto Uzumaki. He was the vessel of the world's will to live. With a final, world-shaking cry, he slammed the lock shut. Seal. The net of light collapsed inward, not destroying the void, but compressing it. The silent, world Ting nothingness was forced into a single, infinitesimal point, a pocket dimension sealed outside of time and space. The vortex in the sky vanished. The demonic forms of the five elders crumbled to dust. Amu gave one last, silent scream of disbelief before it. The altar, and the very peak of the island were drawn into the seal and vanished forever. The silent storm broke. The sun, a real, warm, brilliant sun, broke through the clouds for the first time. The war was over. Across the battlefield, a stunned, joyous roar erupted from the Grand Fleet. But Naruto, his energy spent, his life force critically drained, fell from the sky like a stone, the last of his golden chakra fading into nothing. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The sun on the horizon. The first thing Naruto was aware of was the scent of oranges and the gentle sea breeze. He opened his eyes, and the world was a soft, hazy blur. He was in a bed, the sheets clean and crisp. Sunlight streamed through an open window. He tried to sit in a wave of profound weakness washed over him, so deep and comprehensive it felt like his very bones were made of sand. Easy, idiot, Nami's voice, full of a familiar, affectionate exasperation. She was sitting by his bed, peeling an orange. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear and bright. You've been asleep for a month. The doctors said you burned through about half your life force. You're not a god anymore, you know. He looked down at his hands. They were just hands. The simmering, ever-present well of Kurama's chakra was a quiet ember now, not a raging furnace. The connection O nature he felt in sage mode was a gentle whisper, not a roar. He was, for the first time in a very long time, simply a man. A very strong man, to be sure, but mortal. Vulnerable. He smiled. Feels quiet. It is, Nami said, offering him a slice of orange. The world is quiet, for the first time in centuries. He ate the orange. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. The days that followed were a slow, gentle return to the world. Each of his wives came to sit with him, to tell him of the new world they were building from the ashes of the old. Robin came, her hand resting gently on his as. She told him of the truths now being taught in the schools, of the Rio poneglyph now being a monument in a global museum, not a hidden secret. The world, she said, was finally ready to learn its own story. Reiju brought him a nutritional supplement of her own design that tasted faintly of strawberries. She spoke of the Germa Kingdom's new purpose, sharing their medical and agricultural technology, healing the scars of the old wars. The name Vinsmoke was no longer a curse, but a symbol of progress. Hancock arrived with a retinue that filled the entire wing of the hospital, bearing gifts fit for a king. But she sent them all away, and sat with him alone, telling him of the South Blue, of how the Kuja were now training women from all nations to be guardians of their own homes. Her love for him was no longer a fawning adoration, but a deep, steady flame of a queen for her king, her partner. Tashigi came, awkward and formal in her Grand Admiral's uniform. She told him of the new Marines, now a respected peacekeeping force. With Smoker as a reluctant but fair fleet admiral, she challenged him to a sparring match as soon as he could stand, and he accepted with a grin. Theirs was a bond forged in the fire of shared ideals. Praline brought him a meticulously detailed economic forecast for the next decade. The Mirror World Network was the new Silk Road, a testament to global cooperation. Toto Land was the heart of a thriving, stable world economy. She spoke of profits and futures, but what he heard was a story of a world no longer hungry, no longer desperate. Shirahoshi visited in a specially made, colossal bubble aquarium brought into the port. She told him of the sea, of how the sea kings now swam freely, guiding ships and protecting the innocent, their voices a song of joy instead of fear. The surface and the depths were finally, truly, at peace. Vivi was the last to visit. She brought no reports, no gifts. She just sat with him, holding his hand, and told him about the New World Council. About how the leaders, free from the shadow of a Mu, were arguing, compromising, and slowly, messily, learning how to govern themselves. It was not perfect, but it was real. It was theirs. We did it, Naruto. She whispered, tears in her eyes. You did it. No, he said, squeezing her hand, the truth of it clearer to him now than ever before. We did it. Years passed. The world healed. The new era, born in the crucible of a final war, settled into a vibrant, noisy, and wonderfully chaotic peace. The Pirate King's grand fleet was disbanded, its captains and crews returning to their homes or setting off on new personal adventures, their duty done. The Pirate King himself was seen less and less. His name became a legend, a story told to children. The tale of the ninja who became a king, who married the queens of the seas, and who saved the world from the Great Silence. On a small, unnamed island in the East Blue, the one where he had first met Nami, a sprawling, comfortable house had been built amongst the orange groves. It wasn't a palace. It was a home. It was often filled with a chaotic mix of people, a stoic fish man teaching a young girl with pink hair how to use her poison-based powers for gardening, a quiet, dark-haired woman reading stories of ancient heroes to a group of children with oddly stretchable limbs, a one-eyed swordsman arguing with a blonde chef over the proper way to grill a sea king steak. Naruto, his hair now shorter, lines of laughter etched around his eyes, sat on the porch, watching the scene. His power was a shadow of what it once was, but he had never felt stronger. He was a husband, a father, and now, a grandfather. A small girl with bright orange hair and startling blue eyes, wearing a tiny admiral's hat, ran up to him, brandishing a wooden sword. Grandpa, she yelled with all the fury of a 5-year-old. Grandma Tashigi says you have to spar with me. For justice. Naruto laughed, a deep, happy sound. He ruffled her hair. All right, you got me. But let's go easy on the old man, okay? As he stood up to face his tiny, justice-seeking granddaughter, he looked out at the horizon. The sun was rising, a brilliant, warm gold that spread across a peaceful, endless sea. It was the same sun he had chased his entire life, through loneliness and hardship, through battle and war. He had finally caught it. Or maybe, he had finally realized it was never something to be caught. It was something to be built, to be protected, to be shared. His family, a chaotic, powerful, and loving tapestry of souls from every corner of the world, was his legacy. The laughter of his grandchildren was his treasure. This quiet, beautiful dawn was his one piece. The Pirate King smiled, content. The world was safe. The song was loud, and the sun was just beginning to rise on the horizon. Chapter 10 End.